Good evening and welcome to the Thousand Oaks City Council meeting for January 22nd. I am calling this meeting to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Irwin?
Here.
Councilmember Price?
Here.
Councilmember Adam?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fox?
Here.
Mayor Bill de la Pena?
Present. Are there any requests for continuance of any public hearing or agenda item? None? Very good. Then we will now proceed with special presentations and announcements that we have tonight. The first presentation goes to the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, and I would like to invite Shannon Ansari. She is with Big Brothers and Sisters of Ventura County. Good evening. How are you? Very good. Now, January is National Mentoring Month, and Big Brothers and Big Sisters is one of the largest and most effective youth mentoring organizations in our community and our nation. Every day, mentors provide crucial support and guidance to young people that provide a lasting effect on a child's life. And Shannon is here now with us to tell us more about mentoring and community service and community programs.
Thank you.
Welcome.
As she said, my name is Shannon Ansari, and I am happy to be here on behalf of the staff of Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Ventura County and express our thanks to the City of Thousand Oaks and all the members of City Council. I am the newest member of the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, and I'd like to share with you a little bit about my program, because my program is actually centered here in Thousand Oaks. We have had the opportunity to pair with many mansions and establish a mentoring program for the youth in their after-school program. And what's wonderful about this situation is that I'm able to go into our local high schools and recruit high school volunteers who we screen, who we train, who we support, and who we match up one-on-one with elementary and middle school age children who are involved in the many mansions after-school programs. They commit to 1 year, a minimum of 1 year of service. They go in on a weekly basis. They tutor them, they mentor them, they are a big brother or a big sister to them. And what I think is wonderful is that we're able to give the youth, the high school youth of our area, an opportunity to be empowered and to be engaged in volunteer service. And as I tell my children and the children that are involved in our program, I believe it's never too young to make, you're never too young to make a difference. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I'd also like to introduce, or let them introduce themselves again, because I am new. I'm not familiar with all our board members, but I believe we have a couple of our board members here as well.
Hi, I'm Richard Burke. I'm the president of the board for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I've been involved in this great organization for 5 years. I got involved by being a big first, and then finding my way to onto the board. And we serve, just so you have some perspective, upwards of 1,500 children a year in the Ventura County area. That includes communities from Calabasas out to Ojai, Ventura, Simi Valley as well. And so we're very honored. Our chapter has been around for 43 years, and we're part of a 108-year-old history for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of the United States.
My name is Jax Rains-Turk. I am the chair of the President's Council and past board president. Been associated with this organization for a little bit over 8.5 years. became part of the organization as a way to give back to the community. I think many of us have been led in our lives by mentors. We can all think of one person, 2, 3 people who made a difference in our lives. Through this organization and through the work that we do, we have the power of 10. And by that, each person that we touch affects 10 people. Those 10 people carry that power with them to 10 more. And our children will affect the lives of so many around them. In fact, the results speak for themselves. The results say that our children have a higher likelihood of graduating from high school, that they have a higher likelihood of going to college, that they have better relationships in school with their peers and with their family after being paired with one of our mentors. The work that we do and the work that you've recognized tonight is not just for today, but it's for generations to come. And we thank you for the proclamation. We are pleased and we are honored to serve this organization and to be a part of the future of this community and the communities around us.
Thank you very much. And who would like to receive this commendation or proclamation? Richard? Okay, very good. Well, you stated it beautifully, your purpose, what you do, and few mentoring programs are as deserving as you are, and although all of them do a very good job, but yours obviously is of particular interest to us. And on behalf of the entire City Council, I present you with this proclamation with special recognition to Big Brothers, Big Sisters for your ongoing efforts and commitment, and urge all residents to give back by mentoring young people in their neighborhoods who may lack role models and pass that precious gift on to the next generation. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Where do you want to get that part? And for our last presentation, it is going to be a fun one. I would like to introduce Louis Wilkenfeld. He is the artistic director from Cabrillo Music Theater. And as always, when you are here, there is always wonderful entertainment and very good PR to spread the word about the wonderful organization to everybody else in this community as well as surrounding communities. Now, your season shows are great fun for families, and we know that you offer exceptional programming. So what is the latest that we can expect from Cabrillo this month?
Oh, I'm excited to tell you this. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'm here with Cindy Murray, our Director of Internal Operations. And Cindy's got some material I've asked her to hand out because so I don't have to say everything in this 3 minutes. We have covered a lot of ground in the last 4 months. Hopefully many of you made it to see 1776. If you did, you noticed we had school choirs at every performance, performing outside before the show, educational talkbacks after performances, and a student performance of the show, 90-minute version of 1776, 1,400 young people in the Kavli Theater to see that performance. Since that time, we went and did our 6th annual show for the troops at the Naval Base Ventura County. One of the things I handed out to you is a letter from Captain Vasquez there. It was a great experience for all of us to do that. We then took our performers to senior centers around the community for 2 full days of entertaining folks who can't come to see our shows. And then we were honored to be asked to perform at the city breakfast for the employees here at the City of Thousand Oaks. We then had auditions for Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. We saw 350 people for a cast of 6. And just 2 days ago, finished up auditions for our spring show, Grease. We saw 495 people audition from this area for that production of Grease, which means if I can get 5 more people to audition from among you, we'll hit 500. So I want to hear your singing after this. We're excited to tell you that we're going to have another one of our fundraisers in the Founders Room at the theater during You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown on Sunday nights, February 10th. Shirley Jones and Patrick Cassidy are going to spend an evening entertaining and talking about their lives together and sharing stories, maybe a song or two. And this is information about this can be found on our website. It's limited seating because the Founders Room is a beautiful room that seats about 100 people, and we hope many folks will come and support Cabrillo's outreach programs by coming to that. Now, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. It runs February 8th through the 17th, right here in the building over in the Kavli Theater at the Thousand Oaks Civic Arts Plaza. During the run of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, we will once again be having our animal rescue program where we bring in animal rescue centers from the community. They have their pets, mostly dogs, outside, and they get adopted by our audience members. And we've had a great success with this. Anytime we have a show around a dog, we do our animal rescue program, and of course, the most famous dog of all is in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. So we hope to find homes for a lot of our four-footed homeless friends during that production. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown is based on the classic Peanuts characters. Is it for kids? Yes. Is it for adults? Yes. It is actually for everyone. And here, for a few moments of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, is the cast, the entire cast of Cabrillo Music Theater's You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
How beautiful it is and how my life just lies before me. And I get a very positive feeling about things. Like this morning, for instance. The sky's so clear and the sun's so bright. How could anything go wrong on a day like this? I'm late!
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. You're the kind of reminder we need. You have humility, nobility, and a sense of honor that is very rare indeed. You're a good man, Charlie Brown, and we know you will go very far. Yes, it's hard to believe, almost frightening to conceive what a good man you are.
You are kind.
You are kind to all the animals and every little bird. With a heart of gold, you will do what you're told. Every single solitary word. You bravely face adversity. You're cheerful through the day. You're thoughtful, brave, and courteous. And you also have some faults, but for the moment, let's just say that you're a good man, Charlie Brown. You're a prince, and a prince could be king. With a heart such as yours, you could open any doors. You could go out and do anything. You could be King Charlie Brown. You could be king.
Everybody says to me,
You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
every voice in harmony.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
All I need is one more try. Gotta get that kite to fly. And I'm not the kind of guy who gives up easily. Wonder why they stop to say,
You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
never liked me anyway.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
Trying not to rock the boat, not to make a scene. A good man, yes, but I confess I don't know what they mean. I want to rise like I should and do everything right, but I lie awake at night,
Never sleep,
with questions in my ear.
loud and deep.
I want to join the dance,
Take the leap.
but the answer isn't clear. Then I hear,
Charlie Brown. You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
Get on the bus.
Get on the bus.
Go ahead, get on the bus, Charlie Brown.
Don't want to be late for school.
That's right.
don't want to be late.
Don't want to be late for school. You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
There you go again.
The kind of reminder we need.
Don't know what they mean. I'm not good. I'm not bad. I'm sort of
Cast of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, Dane Byron, Reba Burr, Zachary Ford, Todrick Hall, Jeffrey Scott Parsons, Natalie Storrs. At the piano, our musical director, Dean Mora. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster, at the Civic Arts Plaza box office, or go to our website, CabrinoMusicTheater.com. Thank you all for letting us spend a little of our evening with you. We're off to rehearsal. Thanks again, and we will see you at You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for this wonderful entertainment. It's very refreshing. All right. Now, we are now at the point of public comments. And Mrs. Lawrence, if you could please announce the public comments. Thank you.
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for public hearing items shall be called and heard during the public hearing. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole, and all documents for City Council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 7 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I will call 3 names, and then if the other 2 persons could move to the front and follow each other more closely that way, that would be helpful. The first person to speak tonight, or first persons, are Rich Mayer, Diana Alvarado, and you are representing the U.S. Postal Service, and you have 3 minutes each.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Richard Marr, Public Information Officer for the Postal Service, and with me is Diana Alvarado from our Facilities Department. And on behalf of the U.S. Postal Service, we would like to thank the Council for this opportunity to share our proposed plans for the relocation of the public retail facilities from the Newberry Park Station. The reason behind this proposal is the realignment of USPS infrastructure due to a very serious financial situation that the Postal Service is in. Last year, the Postal Service had a net loss of $15.9 billion, and our cumulative net losses over the past 5 years hit nearly $36 billion. We've reached our statutory borrowing limit this year, and we are facing insolvency. If the Postal Service were a regular business, we would already have gone through bankruptcy and went through a restructuring. And due to the inability of Congress to address our issues, we are now accelerating our cost-cutting measures. And I'll turn it over to Diana to explain the proposal for Newberry Park.
Hello, I'm Diana Alvarado, and I am with the Facilities Department of the Postal Service. In an effort to cut costs, the Postal Service has been working to right-size our facility infrastructure, our portfolio, since 2009. We have been doing this nationally. In the case of Newberry Park, we currently have 2 postal facilities within the Newberry Park area, both underutilized and with excess space. The retail unit currently located on Newberry Park Drive can easily be accommodated in our USPS-owned facility on Grande Vista. By relocating these retail services into our owned facility, the Postal Service can save $311,000 annually. We will reap these savings through our utilities, labor, custodial, and of course our lease costs. We are mandated to have a public meeting anytime we propose to relocate retail, and we will be having our public meeting next Tuesday.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us at what time and where the public meeting will be?
This is at 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Over on 6 o'clock at the Civic Arts Plaza, City Hall Boardroom, 2100E, Thousand Oaks Boulevard here in Thousand Oaks. Right here. I guess it's up on the 3rd floor. The city's helped us put a room together.
Thank you. We do have a question from Councilmember Irwin.
Is there an email address that residents can reach you at? I have had some email correspondence about the Newberry Park issue.
We can share our personal email addresses with the council, but as far as the public goes, all comments have to be addressed through writing, not by email. I'm sorry?
You may continue.
Yeah.
Right. Comments have to come in through mail, and they're accepted through February 13th.
Do we have the address on our website?
Yes, we will be putting all of the information on the city's website.
Where the correspondence needs to be
Yes,
sent to?
we'll provide that information to you. We'll be sharing that at the public meeting next week, and it's already been, I know there's been several newspaper articles with the address already published that I've talked to that have been out there. But we will provide the council all of that information, and also, as I said, we will be happy to provide the council our contact information for the city. But as far as the public goes, we prefer it to come through the mail.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense, right?
We need the revenue. We need those stamps.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? None? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And again, we will share the information on the city's website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have, I believe, is it Rick Politi with the Southwest County YMCA, followed by Dr. Richard Elsley and Barbara Dubose.
Hello, I'm Rick Polite. I live in Newberry Park, and I am the CEO of the Southeast Ventura County YMCA. First thing I'd like to do is thank the City Council. A number of you have been involved and been supporters of the YMCA over the years and have helped us serve lots of people in our community, and we all appreciate that and continue to look forward to continued service. Our YMCA will be celebrating our 50th year next year, which I believe coincides with City of Thousand Oaks in the same way. So perhaps we can all celebrate together. You may be familiar with YMCA programs. Most people know about the Y. We're a well-known organization, but what we find is that people have different thoughts about what the YMCA is based on their own experience or experience of people in the family. They often think of us as day camp, or child care, or healthy living, or Indian guides, or several other things, swimming. But what we found in recent times is we found a way to maybe give ourselves a little bit better package to explain what we do. People don't often know about what the YMCA does and who we are. And how we do that is we talk about ourselves in really being focused in 3 areas of work. And those are youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. And if you think about what the YMCA does, those are really critical pieces to who we are, or what we do. And who we are is essentially the community. We serve everyone in the community, regardless of their age, their background, or their income. And we make it a point every year to raise money to make sure that people that can't afford YMCA programs are able to come in through financial assistance. And we're just weeks away from launching our annual fundraising drive at that point. We're at a time where we are looking towards the future, and our Y is working on a new vision statement and really a new mission statement. And to put it simple for you, we really are looking, and this is still proposed at this point, but the goals of our vision are around building relationships, giving people a sense of having a sense of belonging in their community, and making our community a stronger and healthier place. We have 2 facilities in the community. One is the Conejo Valley YMCA, which has been around since 1964 by CLU, and the other facility is our Miller Family YMCA that opened in 2007 in Newberry Park. So if you have not had a chance to visit that, I would encourage you to do that. We also use a number of community-based places to run our programs as well. I've also left through the city clerk some printed materials that will tell you more about our Y.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Polite.
Thank you.
And I forgot to mention Mrs. Katie Beck, also with the YMCA. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Katie Beck. I'm the executive director of the Miller Family YMCA in Newberry Park. So as Rick mentioned, we are about 5 years young in the community and still really finding our place, figuring out what we're here for, what the community needs us for. And one thing I'll speak to that the Y has always done really well is sell our programs. But what a lot of people don't realize is that we're so much more than just our programs that we offer. And I'll take a couple minutes just to share my personal experience. I came to the Y about 10 years ago, right out of college, and I was a trainer. And I thought, well, that's cool. I'll use my major. I was a sports science major. I'll work in the gym. I'll help people start up their fitness programs. And I learned very quickly that the Y was much more than just a place to come and work out. I was personally impacted by the stories that I saw come through the Y. I helped a gentleman who was an old country western movie star get back on his horse again for the first time in 25 years after just working very slowly with me through the Y. I worked very closely with a woman who had a kidney transplant, heart disease, and lost about 40 pounds doing water aerobics, and now is an instructor herself. So these stories come through the Y every day and are so much more impactful than just come to the Y and swim or come to the Y and sign up for camp. But really it's based around those relationships that staff are forming with the members are forming within the members, and then the relationship that we build in our community just makes us stronger and healthier. So thank you for your time. I wanted to share a couple of our stories that we had to share, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Beck. The next speaker is Dr. Richard Elsley, followed by Barbara Dubose.
Mayor De La Pena, council members, city staff, I'm Richard Elsley. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and it is my pleasure to be here tonight to tell you about the next talk in the Discovery Center's Science Speaker Series. The purpose of the Science Speaker Series is to have scientists come in and talk about new, exciting work they're doing, but do it in a way that anybody can understand and enjoy. Our next talk is going to be in a week and a half, January 31st, and the big news is we're moving. We're going to be here. We're going to be in the Scher Forum Theater from now on. TOTV, if you could put the slide up that's on the overhead. The talk is going to be given by Dr. Paul Nargazian of Cal State University, LA, and the title is Seasick: What the Oceans Tell Us About Climate Change. Our oceans have been suffering a number of indignities at our hands, including overfishing, pollution, trash dumping, oil spills, but also climate change. All that carbon dioxide we're putting in the atmosphere, half of it gets absorbed in the ocean becomes more acidic, and that's bad news if you're a creature who's trying to grow a shell. So, Paul is going to come and talk about experiments and research that have been done in our local ocean areas around here, the Channel Islands, off the coast, and how that all ties in with the other changes that are occurring due to climate change. So, next week from this Thursday, week and a half, Thursday, January 31st, here at the Scher Forum Theater, you can get tickets at the box office or online from Ticketmaster. For more information, we have a website, sciencespeakerseries.org, sciencespeakerseries.org, or call 805-905-8168. And maybe in a future year we could have Charlie Brown come and talk about the science of flying kites.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elsley. We do have a question from Councilmember Irwin.
Are you still able to pay at the door?
This is the first one we've done here. Pay at the door means go to the box office just before the show. Yes.
Okay.
That will work fine.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara DuBose, followed by Mr. Nick Kidd Y and Richard Kikuchi.
Good evening. My name is Barbara DuBose, and I live at 3113 Royal Oaks Drive here on Thousand Oaks. My neighbors have asked me to come and ask the council some questions, but first I'd like to tell you that I have a neighbor who is handicapped, and she likes to walk her dog along Royal Oaks Drive, but she can't do that right now because there's no sidewalk there, and it's dangerous. Okay, you'll have to excuse me because I'm a little bit scared. The first question is, Why the residents on Fairview, Crestview, and Los Robles streets deserve to have nice curbs, driveways, and the entrances to the driveways. Why do they deserve to have that? And the people on Royal Oaks Drive do not deserve to have these nice curbs and driveways. Second question is, why are fences and walls being built on these same aforementioned streets? And the residents on Royal Oaks are being made to feel like third-class residents, that we don't deserve to have a decent curb, driveway, or all these entrance problems. Okay, they need to be taken care of. Our driveways get muddy just like all the other driveways did along those other streets that I mentioned. When it rains, our driveways float down the road. Okay, question number 3. Why were there, it looked to me like there was 3 supervisors to every working person doing the repairs on these streets. That, why did it take 3 supervisors to work, to tell the people what to do on these streets when it should have only taken 1? And I have number 4, and I see my time is up. When are we going to get sidewalks?
You have 3 minutes, so you have 40 seconds.
When are we going to get sidewalks and curbs and nice driveway entrances on Royal Oaks? We were promised that like 25 years ago, that our street was going to be fixed. We also need speed bumps on that road because of where it's at, where it comes around that curve. Right there by the day labor site, people come around there doing 35 miles an hour, and somebody's going to get hit, somebody's going to get hurt on that. It's a dangerous road. It needs to have speed bumps, needs to have the sign, the speed limit sign changed, and we need to have our driveways fixed just like everybody else did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBose. We will answer your questions in a few minutes if you want to stay seated and wait. The city manager will address the issues you raised. Next speaker is Mr. Nick Kidwai, followed by Peter Gilchrist.
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park since '79 and director of Concerned Citizens since 1993. Good evening, wonderful mayor that knows how to pronounce my name. Thank you so much. Council members. It's good to smile, even though I come here with a heavy heart and a lot of anger, I guess, but we have to be civil. I sent a request earlier on regarding your agenda item 14A, closed session. It is not clear what you are talking about. I guess 6 hours is not enough to get a response, but at least it is in your green packet. I would like the city attorney to explain why there is more detail not being provided about this closed session item. Because there are many issues regarding the redevelopment and the auto mall, and inquiring minds would like to know. We have a right. In fact, it used to be, I don't know what has happened, but you could speak separately to the closed session item, and I would like to speak to it, and maybe some others too, because it is very important. The city has suffered because of their negligence. $8 million or $6 million were lost on the redevelopment for the auto mall, as well as the Kelly property for the Conejo Valley Unified School District. The paperwork was not done properly, so that has been turned down, and there's more no's coming from the Department of Finance. In fact, I had asked, if this is regarding the auto mall sign, I would like to let the council know again that the president of the Auto Mall Association right here had said that if the parking is not given to us, then we will back off and not seek the auto mall sign. And I have provided that to you in writing. As well as she said, as well as the council has said, that not a single dollar of taxpayers will be spent on this sign. I have requested since December 18th, I believe, as to provide an accounting as to how this land was purchased. We have a council member there who was a leader in this thing, but I don't know. People go on the days and they just become statues and they forget. In fact, TOTV, could you please show that this is the thing that 2 council members ran against, that they are going to stop wasting taxpayer dollars. And, you know, the ceremony for the oath and all that, I mean, the president was inaugurated yesterday. The council has been a long time. We have to see a single action that will improve things over here, and a lot of the other people are not really taking action and just sitting at home and relaxing. Thank you for letting me speak. 3 minutes should really be rescinded to 5 minutes like the good old days. And you know why there's more participation in Oxnard? You moved your ceremony to 6:30. To 6 o'clock, it's the 6:30 thing. 6 o'clock is too early. You should meet at 7 o'clock like Oxnard, and then there will be more people that will have dinner and come and speak. I'm sorry I went a little over, but you know, this is not, you know, Indy 500. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Peter Gilchrist. I live in Newbury.
One second. Mr. Kidwai, again, the city manager will address some of your comments afterwards, after public comments. Mr. Gilchrist, good evening.
Yes, I'd like to make some observations about, like, the sign. There's already a big sign there already. It's 2 to 3 stories high, and it's 0.6 of a mile long. It's the Thousand Oaks Auto Mall, and they have a little lawn ornament there now, which is very pleasant, and you should just leave it be. I'm just wondering if Mr. Price and Mrs. Irwin and Mr. Fox live around here still. Why would you inflict this on this once great little hamlet? I'm just concerned about your discernment. That's just for once. I also would like to talk about your lack of discernment in your personal jobs and where you formerly worked with Mr. Price. Even you, Claudia, I respect you, and I'd like you, you know, Mrs. Irwin and Mr. Fox, I mean, if you want to give me that time. But also about fluoridation of the water. It comes from a chimney stack from a petrochemical fertilizer plant. And I'd like to get an answer from you, like, just speak forth. What part of chimney stack don't you understand? Does that bother you? Why don't you guys go to the California Water and ask them what they think about hydrofluoric acid? You think it's safe? 1 ounce will kill you in 60 seconds, okay? What's it doing in our water supply? Why don't you guys go there and ask the guys off time what they think about it? What part of chimney stack don't you understand? And there's not a time to be civil. No. The post office, by the way, is getting sabotaged by Congress through Dennis Hassard. It's going to be parted out to different entities. That's already, you know, you'll learn that later in time. They're being sabotaged. Okay. You paid, what, $1.2 million to guard the water supply that's already being currently poisoned at 2 gallons an hour until someone tells them to stop. Why don't you go there and ask the guys if they want to put it in, and they'll tell you no. If it spills on the floor, it'll burn the concrete, and somehow you think it's okay to put in the water. Well, if I want to put in the water, I'll do that myself. You got a dumbed down, fluoridated, vaccinated public who take flu shots and take prescription drugs, so you're not dealing with a discerning public who takes responsibility for their own health. You've maimed and poisoned yourselves and your own children. You're not qualified, okay? You paid over $1 million to test soil testing for a park, for a building? No, for a baseball field, because you found 2 feet of clay 150 feet below the ground. Under those circumstances, none of Thousand Oaks would have ever been built. It's not time for civility. Just speak forth. Be real. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. I mean, I could go on for hours. The overpass on Wendy. They have 5 or 6 guys there, okay? They don't have enough road base. They don't want to truck it in.
Mr. Gilchrist, certainly our assistant city manager may be able to answer some of your questions
I need time to discuss that you weren't even able to discern your own whereabouts at your workplace, okay? Would you like that? Or unless you have something to hide. Do you have
we don't
anything
have
to hide?
anything to hide. Thank you very much. Perhaps,
Did you work at CBS News, by the way?
I used to, yes.
You don't work there anymore, right?
No.
Do you realize that every time that you work there, you work with two low-level CIA agents, Mockingbird agents? Did you know that? Do you know about the CIA?
Mr. Watkins, would you be able to take the information from Mr. Gilchrist and we can
You don't want
answer
any
some of the
information.
questions?
You can't handle the truth. You're not going to do anything. You let the overpass go on for months, where those people are waiting in line to get off of Newbury Park and go back in again, and you do nothing. You're not prepared to do anything.
Thank you very much, Mr.
I'd like to talk to Mr. Price about things, or Mrs. Irwin. Mrs. Irwin, do you have any friends?
We would be happy to make an appointment with you
do
to
you have
discuss
any
this with you.
friends
Okay.
that maybe work for the city council? Of the 25 people who own the auto malls, do you have any friends there? Do you think anything in private might have been said that might embarrass you?
Okay, I will call for a recess. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gilchrist.
You can't handle the truth. I can go on for hours. Unless you have something to hide.
Yes, we will take a recess. Thank you.
Drink your fluoride, your flu shot. It's gone. That's all, Mary. Good luck.
All right. The next speaker, first of all, this was public comments, and some of the speakers raised issues, and Mr. Mitnick was going to answer some of the questions or some of the issues raised by the speakers.
Madam Mayor. Sorry about that. Madam Mayor, members of the council, some of the follow-up from the speakers are clarity here. On the post office situation in Newbury Park, we will have information up on the city's website if it isn't already. And as a reminder, the recommendation for Newbury Park does not impact the main Thousand Oaks post office. That will stay where it's at. We heard from a resident with questions and concerns about Royal Oaks Drive, some of the public improvements that have recently taken place. We appreciate you raising that issue. And as a reminder, that part of the city used to belong, was part of the county, and then it incorporated into the city, and the residents there were built many years ago, most of which before the city incorporated. Consequence of that is the infrastructure there is insufficient. And over the years, we've been trying to come up with a game plan to address that. And that's what's happening now. We had some federal money through what's referred to as the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program, and phase one of those improvements have taken place or are nearly done, and that's what the speaker was talking about on some of the streets, Fairview, Crescent Way, et cetera. Some of the sidewalks, curbs, aprons, and that type of thing. If the speaker's not aware, there will be a phase 2 and a phase 3, and staff will work with you and explain to you what those improvements are. I don't know if Royal Oaks Drive is part of phase 2 and or phase 3, but we will find out and work with you. And Mark Watkins, our Public Works Director, will follow up with you. We heard from a couple speakers talked about the Auto Mall project. There is a closed session item tonight. It doesn't deal with the project per se. It has to do with the potential for litigation, and it's an update for the council in terms of the State Department of Finance's disapproval of using redevelopment money for the public infrastructure component of the Auto Mall project. The Auto Mall sign is not part of this. The Auto Mall sign is funded and by the Auto Mall dealers, and it's a separate project. There's nothing to report at this time. If and when there is something to report in full compliance with state law, staff will, or the council will report that out. But at this point, we have nothing more to add on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. That concludes public comments. We do have a consent calendar to approve. Are there any? No, that is for the that is for the consent calendar. But I wanted to ask if there are any items you would like to have pulled. Councilmember Irwin.
7L.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Adam.
7I.
7I. Okay. Who would like to move the remainder of the consent calendar?
Excuse me, Mayor, we do have a public comment card.
7L, 7I. Oh, actually, we do have one public comment or one comment on 7I. So let's just wait to move the remainder of the calendar until we have heard from the speakers. The first speaker would be Richard Kikuchi, speaking on item 7I.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Rich Kikuchi, and I'm here tonight in regards to your audited financial statements, and I believe you all received a copy of your comprehensive annual financial report as well as a couple of the letters. I had the opportunity to meet with a few of you this afternoon, and I want to thank you for meeting with me, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you now. During those meetings, we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about the audit process, our internal control work, the year-end engagement, and during that time we discussed the fact that as the city's auditors, we really report to you. And so that's why it's good that we had a chance to meet, and I'm here tonight. And so hopefully you had a chance to take a look at your audited financial statements, and in a nutshell, the audit went very well. We looked at all the controls of the city and did our detailed account analysis. Hundreds of hours were spent, all in order to render an opinion on these financial statements, and we have issued an unqualified or a clean opinion on those financial statements. So all in all, the audit process went very, very well. As I mentioned in our meetings this afternoon, our firm specializes in the audits of cities, and we actually audit over 60 cities throughout California. And our relationship with the city of Thousand Oaks really is outstanding. I want to thank John Adams and his staff for really making it a successful audit. I had mentioned to you that there's only a small portion of our clients that are able and have the technical expertise to prepare their own financial statements. And the city of Thousand Oaks was able to do that. And so it just really makes for a great relationship, and it's really understandable why the controls are so strong at the city. So in summary, it was a great audit, and I know you have your financial statements in front of you, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you, and I'm here to answer any questions if you might have any.
And I think, Mr. Adam, do you happen to have a question for item 7I? Well, Mr. Adams, okay. Any questions? Mr. Fox.
Yeah, Rich, just thanks for your comments. I think it's important to point out for the public that it's viewing and for those here, not only are you pleased with the outcome, and incidentally, maybe you can share with the community a little bit of the process, or maybe Mr. Adams, about we do go through a series of auditors every 5 years, I believe, is our policy, so you're not the city's standing auditor. You
Right.
do other cities, maybe some other communities that you do in the Ventura County area. And then what I really want to get on the record is what you, I think, shared with all of us, is that you looked at Thousand Oaks as a model city with respect to how we handle our financial accounting, reporting, and it's really, as you stated, one of the few communities that you can point to and says this is the way you need to do it.
Absolutely. When SAS 114 came out a few years ago, it really encouraged dialogue between the auditors and those in charge with governance. And throughout the audit process with the City of Thousand Oaks, I've had the opportunity to meet with the Audit Finance Committee at least twice a year. And that's in the planning stages and also at the end of the audit. And so that just really attests to the fact of how proactive the city is. I mentioned that I audit over 60 cities, and it's definitely in the minority that I have the opportunity to meet with the members of the governing board. And so I think it's an integral part of the audit process, the planning process, and making for a successful audit. And yes, our firm does specialize in the audits of cities, and we do several other cities in the area. I had mentioned Simi Valley, Malibu, and such. So anyway, the process went very well, and I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kikuchi. And Mr. Adam, you had a question for Mr. Adams.
Thank you for your work, Mr. Kikuchi. It's nice to see that we're spending less than what we're taking in. Right?
Right.
Took in 68 million, spent 66. So there's a bigger government that I've heard of out there that doesn't quite do the same thing we do. But anyway, I did have a question for Mr. Adams. So to get a little clarification on the Theaters Fund.
Yes.
On page 307, Yeah, I look at those numbers, and so in fiscal 10 and 11, theater lost about $250,000.
Correct.
Right?
Well,
221,000.
yes.
And then in 11 and 12, it jumped to 626, which is about a $405,000 difference. What I'm not getting is the premise here in the top paragraph where it says this is due to continued effect of the slow economy and the number of shows presented and attendance, which I think is the common perception that the economy slowed and our shows are diminished a little bit. But if you, maybe I'm looking at this wrong. If you look at the numbers, though, theater and rental fees were pretty steady. They're only down 1%.
Correct. And let me clarify. I think what you need to look and what we can provide is we can provide a 5-year forecast on theaters. One of the things you do see is you see a jump in expenditures, and unfortunately, when the economy started going down, we started reducing expenditures, specifically deferred maintenance. And so we had M&O reductions that were significant. And when you look at the prior year, where we spent $250,000 more this year than prior years, it was because we were deferring maintenance. And so when we have that general comment, when we look at the numbers, you are correct. It is sort of flattened out as far as revenue aspects. And the usage, when we talk about fees, what we're charging, we haven't changed user fees. We've seen some increases in parking revenue and some other revenues, but it's been relatively flat. Attendance and revenues don't always tie straight, one-to-one. But as far as looking at the gap, the $400,000, one, there was an increase in salary and benefits, and then more importantly, operating expenditures, and that was based on deferred maintenance.
Yeah, I understand. The gap, as you mentioned, the $405,000.
Right.
It seems to be coming from two places: salaries and benefits. That's about 40% of it, and the rest is the deferred maintenance, like you said. That's about 60% of it. But I do question the premise that the gap, as you put it, is because of the slowing of the shows. It seems to me that it's the deferred maintenance and the salary and benefits. Salary and benefits are up almost 9%, $164,000.
Right, but I think what we're saying is we haven't seen a recovery. When you look at it, assuming that there has been no increase, it's been flat or slow in the growth of the economy. So we haven't, even though we might have seen attendance numbers that we've seen recently, we have to remember these statements are from 6 months ago. And so even though you might be seeing attendance numbers now that show growth, when you go back and look at that 1 year, 11-12, July 1st of 2011 through 2012, we didn't see any growth in attendance and visitors.
Well, I don't think there's any question that attendance would certainly help, but it seems to me that the culprit over the last couple of years has been salary and benefits and maintenance, and less the attendance. That's the point I wanted to try to make.
Okay.
Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions regarding item 7I? None? Okay. Item 7, I did need to point out that we do have supplemental reports in our supplemental packet regarding item 7I and 7G, for anyone who would like to read them. Councilmember Irwin.
In the report, it says that the obvious place for this charging device is the transportation center, but it's also a rapid charging. Did you think about City Hall at all? Because people are going to have to hang out there for an hour at the transportation center while their car is getting charged, or they're in a carpool and they're going to leave their car in the space for an hour. So I was wondering, what is the reason that the transportation center is a better option for this rapid charger?
Councilmember Irwin, it was actually considered. In fact, it was my idea. Why aren't we putting it right here, or at the lakes, or somewhere where there's services? The answer is this is really the first location in Thousand Oaks, and they want it right next to the 101 freeway. They wanted a transit center. Some of the other locations throughout the state include Metrolink stations. It's really the first location, the first step. We would expect in the future additional of these fast charging stations to be installed, possibly one here at City Hall, possibly other commercial locations. As far as the timing, these actually will charge up a vehicle in as little as 30 minutes. There will be a 1-hour maximum parking limit on the spot. The idea is it's similar to a gas station. It's really an electrical service station. You're going to pull off, you're going to park your car, you're going to charge up, use the restroom, get a glass of water, make a phone call. 30 minutes later, you jump back in your car and you're on your way to Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo or on your way. So really, this is the first one. We expect if these are successful and the demand increases, we expect them to grow and be spread throughout the city.
Okay, so obviously you thought the same thing, that it would be much more convenient where there are services.
I did,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions regarding item 7L? We do have another speaker, but it is on B and D, and that is Mr. Nick Kidwai.
Nick Kidwai, Director, Concerned City in Southern Oaks, resident of Newbury Park. Honorable Mayor, first of all, if I might say, if you have nothing to hide, why is it that the information that I have requested on December 18th regarding the consent calendar item not being provided to me and not addressed by the city manager? I mean, why is it that we are not allowed to speak on the auto mall issue? I mean, it just behooves me. I mean, some of us do not act in an uncivilized manner. It doesn't mean that we don't care and we don't get our answers, and no one on the council, no one responds. It's just absolutely disgusting. If TOTV can show the minutes that I have, that's the ceremonial minutes from the draft that is there. Those are the public comments, and these are un-American. I mean, just like trying to create disruption at a meeting is un-American. To have minutes like this is un-American because it doesn't do justice to what is happening in the public debate. These public comments are a hodgepodge of people that were giving presentations and accolades to the former mayor, as well as people who have grievances against the city. And you should at least have one sentence there so that it can be differentiated. In fact, you spend the time and the taxpayer dollars to have all the speeches of the council people in your minutes, and it's interesting that the former mayor's husband's name was misspelled. I hope it will be corrected, because I brought it before you that a judge from Newbury Park, who's my friend and I supported, his honor was not recognized in the minutes, and nobody, not even the good so-called good council members, said anything about it. I mean, the remarks by the mayor that she was passed 7 times is wrong, because maybe it was 3 times, because the rules that you have are such that it was not 7 times, and you are certainly a dysfunctional body. I mean, and to say that you are a model for cities, I mean, just look at your record for the redevelopment. I mean, the only reason that you folks are not in trouble is because you're drowning in tax dollars. I mean, that's the whole reason, is you make all the mistakes, but there's so much money here that it doesn't make a difference. On a lighter note, TOTV, if you can still show, the seal, that's the pin for 25 years for the city. I was lucky coming here. A former council member gave it to me, and for the life of me, I don't remember who it was. Thank you very much. And so for the 50 years, next year, there will be a super good pin, I hope, and I would be honored to wear both of them over here. Thank you for letting me speak. Have a wonderful evening. I will speak on one more item.
Thank you. Going back to item 7L, I would like to ask a question of staff. It says that this agreement is a 5-year agreement, and we're only charging $1 per hour. What will happen after 5 years? And the reason being because the cost is being offset by this grant, but what happens after 5 years?
After 5 years, this actually is an agreement in place. They're covering all the costs for the next 5 years. After that 5 years, if we decide this unit is not needed or there's no demand, they will have to remove it at their cost. So there's absolutely no risk to the city. If, in fact, we find that there is a demand and it can make the city money, then we would probably renew that lease and or renegotiate that lease in a more favorable sense for the city.
Thank you. And those machines will be equipped with a swiping device to swipe a credit card, or how would that work?
That's correct.
Okay. And, okay, well, that's good news. I just wanted to share, though, with the public that we do have these free electric charging stations at the parking structure. The other day, I saw an $80,000 or $100,000 Tesla parked charging for free the car. So, you know, I just don't want to be, just wanted to point that out, that we probably want to consider looking at that a little bit more detailed. All right, I think Mr. Price, we're working on it, yes, Mr. Price.
Yeah, I just had one question that came to mind as we were discussing this. Will we have access to the data will we personally have access to the data so that we can see what the usage and the usage patterns are, so that we can evaluate whether or not this is something that would be useful in other parts of the city?
Yes, we will. In fact, part of this includes an internet connection. You asked about the credit card. It's actually all included, so we will have access to all the data.
Very good. Okay, is there anyone who would like to move the consent calendar? Mr. Price.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move items A through L to approve and adopt M. I'd move approval of
Okay,
those
thank
items
you.
and the
Please
adoption
vote.
of M.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. All right, it's 7 o'clock, and it's time for our first public hearing. And let me see, this is item number 8A. And Madam Clerk, would you please open that particular hearing?
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8A, Grande Vista Assisted Living Facility, Land Use LU 2011-70568, Zone Change Z 2011-70569, Tentative Track Minor Modification TTMN 2012-70307, Special Use Permit Modification SUMJ 2012-70306, Applicant Frank Morosco, located western terminus of Grande Vista Drive, north side of 101 Freeway. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the council regarding this hearing. All documents for the council and official city records should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 8 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, the applicant is allowed 15 minutes with a 5-minute rebuttal, and the remaining speakers are allowed 4 minutes each. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senior Planner Pam Leopold will begin with a presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Bill De La Pena and members of the council. This evening is the Grande Vista Assisted Living Project for your consideration. It involves general plan land use amendment, a zone change, and planning entitlement applications. This aerial shows the overall project boundary in red, and the project location is indicated in yellow. This project is located at the end of the Grande Vista Drive, the western terminus, and is north of the 101 freeway, west of Wendy Drive. It involves 54.3 acres and is somewhat rectangular in shape. The developable portion is indicated in the yellow, which is approximately 4.7 acres, while the 49.6 acres indicated in red is designated as open space. The project involves the following request. A mitigated negative declaration number 272, an addendum has been prepared. A general plan land use amendment. The request is to change 4.7 acres from industrial to institutional. Zone change involving the 4.7 acres from M1 to PL with the remainder of 49.6 acres unchanged as open space. Tentative tract minor modification to remove the office condominiums from the tract map, and a special use permit major modification to allow construction of a 111-bed assisted living facility. This photo shows a view of the property from Grande Vista looking northwest. The planning process at this location, formally on April 13, 2009, Planning Commission approved an office condominium project. On April 24, 2012, City Council initiated a land use amendment and granted a request by the applicant to concurrently process the entitlement applications with the zone change application. On December 17, 2012, Planning Commission recommended approval of the assisted living project to the City Council, and on January 22nd, 2013, City Council is now reviewing this project. This map shows the general plan land use amendment request, change from industrial to institutional. The request is consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan, and it's compatible with the nearby industrial development due to differences in location and grade elevation. As previously stated, this involves 4.7 acres. This map shows the requested zone change from the existing M1 industrial zone, industrial park, to proposed zoning of PL, which is the public, quasi-public, and institutional lands and facilities. This zoning of PL is appropriate for assisted living facility, and there is no change to the open space for the balance of the property. The special use permit major modification, as previously stated on April 13, 2009, the Planning Commission had approved a special use permit for a two-story office condominium building with a mezzanine over a parking structure. There were incorporated green building measures, and the architect for the project will discuss these green building measures further into this item. The developer chose to request the modification of the project due to market conditions. Tentative tract map, as I mentioned, the minor modification will remove the office condominium designation from the tract map. The access drive for the fire department was one of the major changes to this special use permit. Also relocation of the pump house. There was a reduction in surface parking, delete the underground parking. There was also a portico shore that was added to the building, which is over the covered main entry, and an increase in the main tower height of 2.5 feet. The copper roof that was previously approved is now being requested to be replaced with a steel roof, and the mezzanine is now being converted to a third floor. There's also a mechanical building that was added to the project. This chart shows the project grading overall with the cut of the original project and the modified project. There's approximately 3,900 cubic yards of less cut. With the fill, there's approximately 400 cubic yards of additional fill. The export of there is approximately 4,300 cubic yards of less export, which results in less vehicle trips of 307 less trips. There is an additional 25% encroachment. It's only 0.05 acres or 2,178 square feet, and that was to accommodate the additional fire access drive and relocate the pump house. This site plan shows the main floor plan of the building. The fire department access is on the northeast portion of the rear of the building. The relocated pump house is also over in this area. And there was a mechanical building over added to the far west area. This elevation shows the front of the building adjacent to the 101 freeway. It's an artist rendering. This illustration shows the rendering from the westbound 101 freeway without landscaping. And we also have an illustration shown with landscaping. This photo simulation shows a rendering from the westbound 101 or eastbound 101 freeway without landscaping. And this shows with landscaping. This front elevation is facing south. It's adjacent to the 101 freeway. You can see the main entry or main tower entry. This was the additional height increase of 2.5 feet. This is the portico shore that was added to the main entry for the covered area. These are building elevations with the west wing and the southwest wing and the west wing. And these are building elevations of the east wing, showing the southeast wing and the west wing. The environmental review essentially identified no new mitigation measures, and therefore staff is recommending that Council adopt the addendum to the previously approved mitigated negative declaration number 272 in the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program. Adopt a resolution to approve the general plan amendment to amend the land use element from institutional to, or industrial to institutional for the 4.7 acres. Introduce an ordinance to approve the zone change from M1 to PL for the 4.7 acres. And adopt resolutions to approve modifications to the tentative tract map and special use permit, subject to the Planning Commission recommended conditions of approval and the findings outlined in the staff report. At this time, staff is available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Leopold. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Adam.
Thanks. Yeah, hi, Ms. Leopold. Just a quick question. Do the linkage fee, or should I say the in lieu fees for affordable housing, would they apply to this project?
There is a condition essentially addressing that, and I'll try and find it for you quickly. It's condition number 48 on page 24 of the staff report. And it's based, if you want me to, it's based on the category of lodging, essentially, and at the time of the issuance of the building permit, then any fees would need to be paid at that time.
So they would apply?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Just to add on to that answer, the council has currently set the fee rate at 0, and within, I would say, 4 months, we will be bringing back to the council a review of the fees, and they may be adjusted at that time. And the condition assures that at the point in time when the building permits for the project are issued, they would pay the fees in effect at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Any additional questions? None? Okay, we do have a representative of the applicant speaking, Mr. William Kohler of Agora Hills, followed by the developer Frank Marasco, as well as the architect John Worthy. And just for disclosure purposes, we did have a council member who met with you, with, with the applicant. Thank you.
Council members, city manager, staff, my name is Bill Kohler, City of Agora Hills. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Frank Marasco. Mr. Marasco is here this evening. We're proud to present the assisted living facility that staff has just presented to you. As staff pointed out, in approximately 2009, entitlements were granted to my client for this site for an office condominium. As we all unfortunately know, market conditions made the development of that type of project unfeasible here in our valley, and it remains to be that the case today. We decided to take a step back and look at what would be feasible for that site, and we found a crying need for assisted living facilities here in the Conejo Valley. I won't reiterate the project. I think staff's report was very thorough in its analysis. We have here this evening, in addition to the applicant, Mr. Marasco, our architect, our engineer, Dr. LaBelle, who's the chief of staff at Los Robles Hospital. I hope I don't get this name wrong. Mike Zoig from Integral Senior Living, and our landscape architect for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Kohler? None? Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Frank Marasco, the developer. Good evening, Mr. Marasco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fellow council members, Frank Marasco, Camarillo. As Mr. Kohler just said, by the time we received our entitlements for the office condo, the market had passed us by, and as one of the planning commissioners said about a month ago, the city doesn't really need any more new office buildings. So this building, though, was very special to us, and it fit its location perfectly, and it was so attractive that we just didn't want to abandon it. So we came back, and our architects and engineer worked really, really hard with staff. They did it very cleverly. Every time we reached a certain level, then they came up with the next height that we had to go to. And so with all of that behind us, we just weren't about to let it go. And so now we've created a project that actually has less environmental impact than the one that was approved. And I think Ms. Leopold brought up many of those features, the less fill, the grading, the number of trips, the number of cars cut down by a huge factor. As to the 50-acre open space dedication, which comes with the project, and I hope if you can approve it, this 50 acres then becomes open to the public, and more people, I think, would be able to enjoy it. I know it has a very, for those of you who haven't walked on it, it has a very high promontory, and you can see all the way to the ocean. And the Oxnard Plain, and then if you look back to the south and to the east, you get the ridgeline of the Santa Monica Mountains. It's really attractive. So I just have three quick introductions for the people who have worked very hard on the project and know a lot about it. And the first is our architect and designer, John Worthy, and he's going to quickly outline the features of the building, but he's going to concentrate on the green elements in the project. And then Dr. Lauren LaBelle, the Chief of Staff at Los Robles Hospital, will discuss the need for this project because it overlaps into his practice. And I hope he also talks about instituting a educational program for people with who need memory care. And it's something that takes 20 minutes a day and can help stabilize these people, which would be a really nice occurrence and a great blessing, I think. And also, although not a scheduled speaker, our landscape architect, if you're interested, has special training in creating landscape environments for older people. And she did some really interesting things on this project with planters and the ability to grow things. And I was amazed also with different plants and flowers creating different scents that create different moods. So I would hope that you would consider our project favorably, and I want to thank you very much for the opportunity. So right now I'll introduce John Worthy.
Mr. Worthy, would you please state your name and the city of residence?
Hello, my name is John Worthy. I reside in Ventura. Mayor Bill de la Pena, members of the City Council, thank you for hearing about our project tonight. I'm an architect and design director with Johnson & Muller Architects. We're the architects for the assisted living facility and also the previous office condominium project. We're requesting your approval of the project, along with the land use and the zoning, for the following architectural reasons. It's a high-quality architecture for a prominent location in your city, which will increase civic pride. Also, we have green building features that will reduce energy use, and we feel like those features really fit the site. The design of the building is intended for the site itself, the steep hillside terrain. It has a V-shaped footprint, which anchors into the terrain. It also has a lot of stone veneer. It also has earth colors that blend into the hillside landscape. There's also the second and third floors step back, which reflect the topography of the site. Frank Morosco talked about the green building features. We've given staff about 3 pages of green building features that the project will incorporate. We will have to meet the requirements of the California Green Building Code. So we meet those requirements, and we have features that will go above and beyond. I'd like to focus tonight on how we're reducing electricity use in the building. Nationwide, buildings are responsible for 70% of the electricity used. This building will reduce that, will make a positive impact for the community and also for the natural environment. The building's exterior design has deep overhangs to shade the windows. That's going to reduce the solar heat gain in the building. We also have increased over-code insulation in the walls and the roof. The steel roof, the metal roof that Pam had talked about is actually Energy Star approved. It's actually designed to reflect sunlight and reflect heat. Also on the flat portions of the roof will be a light-colored reflective roof known as a cool roof that will also reflect solar heat gain. All this said will increase occupant comfort. It will also reduce the need for air conditioning, which will then reduce the need for electricity. Additionally, inside we will have LED lighting. We'll also have outside, we can do LED parking lot lighting. We'll have Energy Star appliances, again, to reduce energy use. And thirdly, what we're really proud of is that on the rooftop, we're going to have 250 solar panels, so we can create our own electricity. This is going to help offset the demand for the lighting inside the building, and should reduce, should offset it, should provide 20% of that electricity required. So please consider for the above reasons and the approval of the project. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? None, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Next up is Dr. Lauren LaBelle. Good evening, Dr. LaBelle.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak for a few moments. I don't feel like I'm the last batter here, but I just wanted to share with you the reason for this project. I've been a neurologist in this town for 30 years, working at Los Robles, with a particular interest in memory and dementia as well. I previously had submitted a letter to the council regarding statistics and the needs for this project as well. So one fact is that our population is getting older, and a lot of the people in town are over 65. Another fact is 1 out of 8 individuals over 65 have Alzheimer's, and every 75 seconds a new case is founded. There's several facilities in this town for assisted living, and all of them are about 95% filled or more. So it's not unusual for me to have to send my patients to Oxnard, San Fernando Valley, just to have a place to stay. And as you know, families want to be close to their loved ones and be able to visit. So we need this facility in our community. There is a lack of assisted living for the aging population. And in particular, we'll be looking at, and I'll be looking at, involvement in memory center and brain training, which is not so much nouveau, but really the wave of what's going on in assisted livings. I imagine that every one of the council members have loved ones who are getting older, that you have people in assisted livings, and if not, in the future we'll have that need. So we hope to be able to provide that need for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. LaBelle. I do have several more cards of speakers who say they're available for questions only. Niels Johnson of Johnson and Muller Architects. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? None. Also, Randy Toder, civil engineer. None. Okay. Mike Zook or Zoik, director of Integral Living Facility Management Company. Who is he? There. Any questions for Mr. Zoik, is it? Okay. None? Okay. Then we do have Richard, former mayor of Thousand Oaks, Richard Hoos. Good evening, Mr. Hoos.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and members of the staff. My name is Dick Hoos. I'm a longtime resident of the city. This certainly sounds like it's going to be a very nice addition to our community, and I just have a couple of quick questions. The location of the facility up at the top of the grade certainly makes the title there, the name they have given, Grande Vista Assisted Living, a very appropriate name, it seems, because there are wonderful views from the peak of the Conejo Grade. They're also going to have a couple of neighbors that I don't know whether they've been considered or not. One of them is the Highway 101, of course, which has thousands and thousands of people traveling up and down it every day. There's also very close up the road a way station for trucks, and as you drive by, of course, you see trucks idling, waiting their turn in that area. And my question really is, has the staff done any kind of an environmental or air quality survey in that area? The project will be above these pollutant generators, and it seems to me that there's a high probability that the quality of air up on that hill above these thousands of vehicles may not be just what we would really like. And I just wanted to ask whether or not the staff has addressed that or done any kind of monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. Hoos. I'm sure staff will be answering your questions momentarily.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think if council doesn't have any questions, we can have Mr. Burgess perhaps address the environmental issue and the fact that the mitigation was, we had an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we did have an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration. All the air quality issues were dealt with in the original MND, and there was no significant impacts determined. The addendum did not propose any new mitigation measures.
Okay, Mr. Hoos, I hope you heard that, and if not, perhaps Mr. Burgess can explain this to you personally after the presentation here, after this particular case. Any other concerns that may need to be addressed? Mr. Prescott or Mrs. Leopold?
Well, I can just add, as to the proximity to the way station, there looks to be they're about a half a mile apart, and they are separated by mountainous terrain. So in terms of the direct impact of additional noise associated with that way station and or the diesel pollutants at that location, we do not believe that would be an impact on this particular project.
Okay. No comments, no questions. Very good. The applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal if you feel so inclined. If not, I will close the public hearing. Do you decline? Do you waive your right to speak for 5 more minutes? You do?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No? Thank you very much. Okay. Then I will close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion and or motion. And Mr. Fox.
Sure, I'll move the recommendations of staff. Can I just move all forward? You guys want me to take them in order? Madam Clerk?
You can do all 4 of them together.
All right. I'm going to move recommendations 1 through 4. I'm actually pleased with the change in use. I think the testimony tonight, particularly from Dr. LaBelle, indicates this is a need in our community, and we don't have a lot of parcels left to develop in town, and so I think it's important that whatever we do provide has some value to the community. And I think by anybody's account, this is a needed facility that we have here in the community, and I think the former mayor put some good points with respect to the siting of it, and I'm confident staff did a good job in analyzing the environmental impact. So I think this is going to be a positive for our community, and I would ask for a yes vote.
Okay, we have a motion. Any comments, Mrs. Irwin?
I'm going to be supporting the motion. As we heard this evening, I'm just repeating, this project has less fill than the previous project, less cars. It's a green building. I love that presentation. And we're adding 50 acres of open space to our inventory. Finally, as Councilmember Fox says, there is a big demand in this community for this type of use. So what's not to like?
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments, I should say? Mr. Adam.
This is easy to support. I agree completely. We are underserved when it comes to assisted living beds in this community, and I think in the future we'll need even more than what we're going to get tonight. It's a great building, environmentally sound. As Councilmember Irwin said, we get 50 acres of open space to boot, so I'll support the motion.
Mr. Price.
Well, I too will be in support of the motion. I think that aesthetically, this, particularly the before landscape and after the landscape features, it's beautiful, well done, and I think you hit a home run. So I would be in support.
Thank you. I too will support this particular application. I do like the green building elements, and I'm glad that you're going beyond the minimum requirement by the state. And this may be the first assisted living facility with solar panels, as far as I know, and I think that is the case. So congratulations on achieving that. Mr. Fox, any final comments regarding your motion? Please vote.
The motion carries 5-0, and the ordinance title is an ordinance amending the municipal code relating to zoning maps and changes in zoning classification of property located 3499 Grande Vista Drive, zone change 2011-70569.
Thank you. That is a done deal. Congratulations. And next up, we have item 9A, which will be presented by John Prescott, our Community Development Director. Good evening, Mr. Prescott. Mrs. Irwin?
I don't have anything in the packet, but I do want to announce that I had ex parte communication with the applicant and Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. Mr. Prescott.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the City Council, we do have a PowerPoint presentation regarding this matter. The subject is a requested amendment to an agreement that the city has with the Meta Housing Corporation. And the background of the agreement is that in 2002, the city approved a comprehensive set of land use policy changes called the Western Plateau Preservation Plan. And part of that plan involves some changes to the Dos Vianos Ranch specific plan. One of those changes removed from that plan a potential future site that would have accommodated some affordable housing. And to offset that change, the city required the developers in the Dos Vianos Ranch to offset in a couple of different ways. One of the developers paid some funds into the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The other developer, the operating engineers, wished to actually build an affordable housing project. And so the city agreed to enter an agreement with them by which the city would provide some land and the operating engineers would build the affordable housing project. And that agreement was entered in 2003. And that is actually the subject agreement that we're talking about this evening. In 2005, the operating engineers came forth with an actual project plan. The city had identified a site, which I'll get to in a minute, the specific location. And just before the city council hearing on that project, the operating engineers announced that the project didn't pencil out. It did not meet the rate of return that they were entitled to under the agreement, and so they went back to the financial drawing board. Probably about 6-7 years passed, and they did not pursue development anymore, and instead assigned their place in the agreement to Meta Housing Corporation. Under the agreement, the city council was required to review and approve any assignments, and in May of this year you did that. So it now is an agreement between the city and Meta Housing. Subsequent to that, Meta has asked for some changes to the agreement, and that's the subject of tonight's agenda item. The subject property in question is located near the Rancho Caneo Industrial Park on Caneo Center Drive, west of Lawrence Drive. It consists of about 7.9 acres, presently designated for institutional use on the general plan, and in the specific plan for that area, it's called out as a recycling center, and that is a somewhat antiquated concept. And when the city entered the agreement in 2002, they were aware that that would be changed. Aerial view of the site. To the south of it, the bottom of the picture, and to the west, the left side of the picture is open space. Excuse me. And directly across Caneo Center Drive are some light industrial warehousing, R&D type buildings. As I mentioned, the agreement required the city to provide the land. I've shown you the land, and also to process the legislative changes, amendments to the city's general plan and the specific plan in that area to allow the affordable housing project. And the agreement called for 140 apartments on the 7.9 acres. The agreement calls for predominantly one-bedrooms. More than half of the units would be one-bedroom. The balance split pretty evenly between 2 and 3 bedrooms. And then it was spread across affordability categories, very low income, and moderate income. The AMI that you see there is area-wide median income. In Ventura County, I believe that's about on the order of around $85,000 or so for a family of 4. So moderate income would go up to 120% of that. The agreement also includes some design criteria and conceptual site plan, and these are in your packet. Key provisions is that the project is limited to 2-story buildings, and also that they're allowed to use on-street parking for guest parking, which was a waiver of the city development standards at the time, which otherwise would require all parking to be on site. The developer in the agreement was entitled to an 8% return, internal rate of return, and the city also agreed to a cap on the total of city and Canal Rec and Park District fees of $17,000 a unit. And the agreement includes a prevailing wage clause, which means that any contracts for work on the project would have to pay prevailing wages. Also, the agreement did not have any fixed term or any expiration date. The request Meta Housing is provided to the city is to make some changes to that agreement. The first is to change the unit size, and there is a letter in the packet and also a further letter in the supplemental packet that details their request. They'd like to change the unit mix to have more larger units and fewer one-bedroom units. They'd like to change the affordability mix to completely eliminate the moderate income units and instead focus on the low income and very low income units. in their presentation. I'm sure they'll explain why, but it has to do with the type of financing that they would like to get to build the project. They're also willing to remove the 8% internal rate of return requirement, and they can, I'm sure, explain why they're willing to do that. They would like to adjust the fee cap modestly upward, although in the material they submitted today, they say they are willing to pay the city fees that are in existence and CRPD fees. So that's a little bit of a change from what you have in the packet. They would like to remove the prevailing wages clause, and they had requested administrative review of the RPD permit, the actual site plan and architectural design of the project that would be filed to be processed administratively rather than require planning commission review. And another key change is they would like to develop 3-story buildings instead of 2-story buildings. That frees up the site plan, more surface area for common recreational use, and they wish to build a community building. The process, this is a change to an agreement that the city has with Meta Housing, and tonight we're asking the council and giving recommendations to the council on how we feel if we do renegotiate it, what the city's position should be in the deal points. And that's the direction we're seeking tonight from council. And if the council says, yes, go ahead, renegotiate with them, then we would meet and gives direction. We'd meet with them and draft up a revised agreement with the deal points that the council directed. We'd bring it back to city council, and if the council approves the renegotiated agreement, then Meta would be able to file a development application with a site plan and the architecture and all of that, which would go through the normal process. And Meta always, in my opinion, has the option to proceed under the existing agreement. We have an agreement with them. They do certain things, we do certain things. So our recommendation to council is laid out in the report. We're not inclined to go as far as they'd like to in changing the unit mix. We'd like to have more balance rather than reducing the number of 1-bedroom units and increasing the number of 3-bedroom. We'd like more of a mix as outlined on this slide. Not really too far off of the what they're requesting. On the affordability, we do feel it's very important to keep a significant moderate income component rather than skewing it towards the low and very low income categories. So we're recommending something that's roughly a one-third split like the existing agreement with a little bit of flexibility there. On the baseline 8% return, it's okay to delete that. And the cap on city fees, we're recommending to remove that cap. We're not entirely certain as to what the actual amount of fees would be in our staff report. We thought it would be around $20,000 as compared to the $17,000 cap in the agreement. The prevailing wages clause, it's our city attorney's belief that this may apply, and we would be only comfortable in removing it if the applicant provided an opinion from the Attorney General or other authority, state authority, that it was not required in this particular project. Where it may come into play is because it's city-owned land and we are providing it to the developer, and that is really a subsidy to the developer and shows the involvement of a public agency, and therefore we're conservative in thinking that prevailing wage clause may apply. Design review process, there is a general plan amendment and a specific plan amendment that need to go along with the project, and the City Council has jurisdiction over those, and the Planning Commission has the role of providing a recommendation to Council on those. So the project does have to go through Planning Commission and City Council. There really is no other way around it. Building heights, we feel that because of the location and configuration of the site with the hillside as a backdrop, that there could be a reasonable mix of 2- and 3-story buildings in the project, with the 3 stories more towards the rear, so we'd be willing to negotiate on that basis. We also feel that there are some parts of the agreement that were really missing, and one of those was a fixed term. It's indefinite now. We think it should be a 5-year agreement with extensions as mutually agreed, and that would provide each party the opportunity to terminate or modify it at those decision points. Right now, we've been in an agreement for 10 years. We've got municipal asset tied up, and in an agreement that has no easy way to modify or terminate. Mini Mansions had submitted a letter back in, I believe it was May, regarding the project at the time. The council was considering assigning it to Meta Housing. They wanted to eliminate the 8% return, and you can see on the screen some of the other changes they would like to make. I received an email today from Rick Schroeder of Mini Mansions saying that they are essentially have no objections to the changes to the agreement that the city has outlined, and they understand the reasons why the city is wanting to change the income mix and the bedroom mix. And he was not able to be here tonight, but wished to communicate that. But we do believe of those 4, the one that we agree with and should be incorporated is the elimination of the 8% return. And in our staff report, we address the other 3. General plan housing elements of consideration that we address in the staff report. And basically, this site is one of the sites we identified in our last housing element to meet the regional housing needs allocation that we had from that housing element. We are looking like our new housing element's going to have a much lower need, so that may not actually come into play. But even if we do have, are not able to provide the zoning on this site by the time our new housing element is done, which is later this year, and therefore we get a penalty from the state, it's what we believe is a manageable penalty that can be absorbed. We would have to provide an extra 63 units somewhere else in the city, zoning for 63 units. Measure E, the project would require, Measure E is a voter-imposed general plan process whereby the residential density of the general plan and the commercial acreage of the general plan in 1996 are set as baselines, and the city, through amendments to the general plan after that date, cannot cause the actual capacity to exceed those baselines. Presently on residential, we're 187 units below the 1996 baseline. This project will require, or this general plan amendment would require 156 units of capacity, so there is sufficient capacity under Measure E that the general plan amendment could be approved by the City Council and not require ratification by the voters. We also note there's another amendment pending that will reduce general plan capacity by another 200 units, thereby creating an even greater difference between that where we are today and what that cap is if it's approved by council, and that's calendared in May, I mean March. And then just wanted to call attention to the renegotiation clause in the agreement, and that is basically requires both parties to negotiate in good faith to meet the purposes and intent of the agreement, which was to produce at least 120 units of affordable housing on a site that was provided by the city. So we're asking the council to consider Meta's request, consider input from other parties such as Mini Mansions, anyone else that might testify this evening. And our staff recommendation, we do believe that that recommendation represents a good faith renegotiation of the agreement. There are some concerns that we had with the original agreement. Time has changed, and we feel that the changes that we're recommending are beneficial and in good faith. And then for the council to provide us direction to move forward on the renegotiation. And with that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Mrs. Irwin.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So basically, of the 8 staff recommendations, there's a disagreement with the staff and the applicant on items 1 and 2. Item 5, you want an opinion from the Attorney General. Item 7, is there agreement from the applicant on that?
No, I don't think so. I think they still believe they would like all 3-story buildings.
Oh, all 3-story buildings. Okay. And then item 8, was there agreement from the applicant on that?
They've addressed that to some degree in the letter that you got in your supplemental today, and basically their position is that they could consider that if their other changes are acceptable. So it's something they'd be willing to negotiate on.
Okay, and then my other question is on the Many Mansions letter request. They had suggested require on-site residential services, and we know they do a good job in the city in the buildings they manage, or the projects they manage. So why is it that the staff thought that that should not be included as a requirement?
Well, we agree very strongly that Many Mansions does an exemplary job of managing affordable housing projects here in the city, and they do include on-site residential services for on-site services for their residents, social services. Part of that, I think, and maybe a large part of it, is because of the funding that goes into affordable housing projects, that is a factor that helps them compete for that funding if they include it, and in some of the grant programs, it's actually a requirement. So I think, obviously it's something they like to do. It's important for the community to be done, but I think it's something that's tied to the particular funding sources that they use to build the projects. And all other things being equal, we would recommend that as well for this project. I think the reason we didn't is because it would have been, in our view, a significant departure from the original agreement. It was never a requirement in that original agreement, and to me, and we can talk about it. I mean, there's other viewpoints, but to me, it seemed like it was going a little bit beyond what would be a reasonable requirement in renegotiating.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott.
Mr. Adam.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about 2 of the numerous issues here. Unit size would be first, Mr. Prescott. So it looks like the biggest difference between the city and Meta is in the 3-bedroom area. The city's saying no more than 30. Meta wants 48. City's saying that, hey, should be an adult community. It's isolated. There aren't the services there for kids, basically. Meta's saying, well, wait a minute. We want to be able to have our people have some upward mobility and be able to raise a family and move up to a 3-bedroom facility. I think I got that right. And there also seems to be at play 10 extra units that aren't accounted for in the flexibility area there. What I'm getting at, if Meta, and this was touched on by Councilmember Irwin and in the Many Mansions report, if Meta were to designate resident amenities for families, if that was required of them, which at this point I don't believe it is, would the staff feel more comfortable than adding 3-bedroom units to where they are now to move up from 30?
The current agreement does require some recreational amenities, some kind of sports court facilities, which are, could either be children or young adults or even old adults, and a small tot lot. So I think that the recreational amenities that are required in the current agreement kind of match pretty well the bedroom mix of the current agreement. We're recommending a little flexibility, and however, as we say in the staff report, there is a concern that this area with all the industrial around it is not really probably the best location in town for projects that are more family-oriented, which we think a project with a larger proportion of 3-bedroom units would be.
Well, where do you see those 10 units going then?
Well, they could be, the first one or two bedrooms were requiring at least 50, so they could be 60. So you could have 61 bedroom, 52 bedroom, and then 33 bedroom. We have an upper limit on the 3 bedrooms at 30, so it could be fewer than that, and a lower limit on the 1 and 2 bedrooms at 50, so they could be more than that. Wanted to give them a little bit of flexibility in designing the project, but with a kind of a cap on the larger units.
Okay, thank you. The second thing on the affordability, Meta, along with many mansions, are saying that there should be no moderate income at all, for various reasons. RENA says the income levels are underserved. Many Mansion agrees, saying that, why would we want to support families in the $105,000 a year range? The city, on the other hand, is saying, well, we don't want to over-concentrate in the very low and the low-income areas because, again, you don't feel that the services there would support it, the over-concentration. I think I got that right. If the services were more delineated or required, would the city then, or the staff, I should say, feel more comfortable in allowing some decrease in the moderate income? From 50 down to, and versus having at least 50 there?
That might be a little bit of a factor. You'll notice that what we're recommending is very similar to what the existing agreement is, and I think the existing agreement to some degree goes back to the mix in Dos Vientos of that project that was taken away, which was a mix of senior market rate, senior affordable, and family affordable. So it wasn't even all affordable. And so when it got translated over here, I think we wanted to have that broader range of affordability, including the moderate income units. Typically, apartment units are, for the most part, designed for lower income and very low income. But in this case, because of the history of how we got to this point and the location of it, we wanted to have more of an across-the-board mix, including moderate income units.
Can I elaborate on this a little bit?
Sure.
It might help you out.
Sure.
This was part of the Western Plateau Plan, which I negotiated a long time ago now. This particular, as Mr. Prescott points out, this particular aspect of the project was never intended to be part of the Western Plateau Plan. It was, candidly, it was kind of an 11th hour item placed in by one of the council members, precisely for the reason Mr. Prescott outlined. There was a trade-off in housing mix from Dos Vientos, and if my recollection is correct, it dealt with some apartment housing, and so the thought was to replace that apartment housing, quote, affordable housing, out in the present location. At the time, really the emphasis was to acquire and preserve the open space. That was really the whole point of the Western Plateau Plan. It was not to provide affordable housing out in this area. And the parties at the time reluctantly agreed to this aspect of it. Operating engineers at the time thought they could put some of their retirees out there. It was going to be senior housing, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's how it got to where it got. And then, a lot of things have transpired since then.
Thank you. That's a good point. But it just brings me to what the biggest issue seems to be, and probably rightfully so. The staff feels that the location is rather isolated.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's why I point out, this was not purposely put in the Western Plateau Plan for. It was one of those things where the parties agreed, the city included, in order to get the deal done. The whole point of Western Plateau was to protect and preserve pristine open space. This affordable housing deal was put in the 11th hour, and we basically agreed to it in order to get the deal done. But at the time, the city never thought that that was a good place for that type of housing. You're exactly correct.
Yeah. So the key, I mean, if it is going to go in, how do you overcome the isolation? And that's what I'm trying to get at.
You're right. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, is the city going to go to the development, or will the development put in enough amenities to make it self-sustaining for the families and the kids that live there? And that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, how comfortable would the staff be if Meta could establish that?
Yeah. And Mr. Prescott, maybe you can. It was senior housing, wasn't it originally?
I can't really recall that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was
could have
senior
been.
housing. And,
Yes,
and then
I do
it's changed.
recall it was senior housing.
Claudia, you remember? Was it senior? Okay, yeah. All right.
Did Mr. Prescott answer your questions to your satisfaction?
Yeah, so far, I think so. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Are there any additional questions? None. Then I would like to ask a few questions.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Actually, I do.
You do? Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Fox.
Mr. Prescott, could you just briefly go over the Measure E issues? You know, I know you outlined them, or it's in the staff report, because we're adding and subtracting and looking at some different projects. I just want to make sure that the balance of units is still viable for housing, mixed housing on as it relates to the specific plan of the boulevard. I realize the redevelopment agency's gone and all that stuff is changed, but I just want to make sure that if by some economic upturn that the specific plan does move forward on the boulevard in its entirety, we still have sufficient housing units that at least that can be looked at.
Okay, I'll address that. Right now, the residential capacity of the general plan is 187 units, less than that cap based on the 1996 baseline. This would use 156 of those units, so that would leave 31 left. On the other side of the ledger, the Boulevard specific plan itself, actually the land that was within the adopted specific plan did have some residential designations before the specific plan was adopted, so they get credit for that.
Right.
And that's 214 units. So that's in its own separate little pool over and above the 31 citywide units that would be left. And then you will be considering in March a kind of a cleanup general plan amendment of some property that was designated for apartment zoning and high density on the general plan. Back in 1996, subsequently a development was approved at a medium density, and we are recommending to change the general plan down to reflect the existing development density. If that amendment has been through the Planning Commission, they recommended approval of it. That'll come before you in March. If you approve that, that will reduce the current capacity by another 215 units, which essentially adds 215 to the available bank. So you would have 246 units available citywide, plus the 214 that are...
So you're looking at like 460 units, something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. That could be available?
That could be available, yes.
And then, if memory serves me, that's more than enough that would provide for a mixed-use housing on the boulevard if that were to occur?
Yes, it would, but interestingly enough, we haven't got any mixed-use proposals yet, but there's a couple of standalone residential projects that are in the early part of the pipeline, coming up for pre-apps and preliminary review.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't run afoul of the specific plan that we approved, because I know it had housing in it. I'm not even advocating for housing. I'm just simply saying we already approved it. We went through a 10-year trilogy of that specific plan. I just want to make sure that we aren't losing what we had approved in the specific plan of the boulevard.
And you're not. The 214 units is allocated to the boulevard.
All right.
Nobody else can use that.
Okay.
And then the rest, the citywide pool, that's available to the boulevard if the council wants to allocate it there.
All right. Very good.
Okay, Mr. Prescott, you did mention Measure E and the fact that earlier in your presentation, you're saying that 214 units are allocated for the specific plan. Did I hear you say something about needing approval, this meta housing proposal needing approval only by the City Council, and there was no Measure E component to it?
There's no vote of the electorate required. As long as the residential capacity of the general plan is less than what it was in 1996, then approval of a general plan amendment does not require a vote of the people in addition to the approval by City Council. And that's the case here.
But the applicant is now also requesting that this would be approved, potentially be approved administratively and not by the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Yeah, and I think, we've explained it, and I can explain it again if we need to, but that's not possible. Not to you, to the applicant. But I think they're really kind of dropping that. I didn't see that in their letter here. I think they understand that their original request to have it approved administratively really was not legally possible. So they can address that, but I think now they accept that when they file the project, that whole package of the project and the general plan amendment and the specific plan amendment will go through the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Okay, I would hope so. All right, if there are no additional questions of staff, I can call the public speakers here. And the first one is James Shoemaker of Los Angeles, I believe. Okay, then we also have Casey Burke of Los Angeles. Casey, if you could please state your name and the company for which you work.
Yes, thank you. My name is Casey Burke, and I'm with Meta Housing. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to talk to you about this project. City staff, Mr. Prescott did an excellent job of giving the history of it, and you guys have plenty of information in front of you, so I won't go over all the details, but I'll make myself available to answer any questions you have. A little closer. Okay, is that better? Oh, there you go. What I think we're really here to talk to you about tonight is when Meta took over this deal, we knew that we were going to have to make some adjustments in order to make it financially feasible and to allow the deal to move forward on a current timeline, or at least one that was somewhat predictable. Obviously, the project had financial difficulties, or it wouldn't have sat there for the 9 years with the operating engineers before we took it over. So what we were attempting to do was to stay within the spirit of the agreement and the framework of the agreement and provide affordable housing and provide family housing for residents of Thousand Oaks. And what we attempted to do was to make minor modifications both to the affordability, to bring that down from moderate and actually make it more affordable, adjust the unit mix, and provide more 3 bedrooms, and also change the site plan, and then remove prevailing wage, which is a big impediment to this deal moving forward just from a cost perspective. And we don't feel, and we've had it analyzed by our legal team, we don't feel that that's applicable on this. With regards to the site plan and the unit mix, I'd like to address the point that Councilmember Adam brought up, which was, that was the exact reason why we increased the number of 3-bedroom units, was because we did want to create more of a sense of a community. We recognize that the site is slightly isolated, although we think that's one of the beauties of the site, is that it seems like a tremendous place to live, and you're really not that removed from any services. You're very close to the Target and the Home Depot and restaurants and coffee shops that are all very close. But we wanted to create, recognizing that it is isolated slightly back there, we wanted to create its own community. And so we increased the number of 3 bedrooms so there would be more families and more children on site. We do, to your point, Councilmember Irwin, we will actually provide social services, whether it's required in the agreement or not. That's part of our program, and it's what we do. And you need to have a healthy community there in order to sustain that and support that. And the third reason why we adjusted the site plan to increase the 3 bedrooms was to, what we felt was improve the site plan. We worked close with city staff to do that, and we wanted to increase the amount of amenity space. The original site plan, which was all 2 stories, didn't have any manager's office, it didn't have any community space, there was no pool. It did have a tot lot and a basketball court, and we kept both of those, but we also added a pool, we added more parking, and we added the community residence room, which is where we would hold our social services. We could, is my time up?
Yes, it would be, if you could wrap it up really quickly, please.
Okay. We would be willing to look, we're willing to work with staff to see if we can make some adjustments on the 2 and 3 stories, and even possibly the 3 bedrooms, but we would lose possibly some of the amenity space that we provided, and I'll be available for any additional questions if you have any.
Are there any questions of Mr. Burke? I actually have a question. How far will you be from the Home Depot, Target, and the restaurants that are there?
We've clocked it, and it's just under 1 mile. It's right about 1 mile by car.
Okay. Mr. Adam has a question for you.
Good evening. How do you answer the objection or the concern that there's with your plan, with the affordability mix, there's an over-concentration in the very low and the low income, and the staff feels there should be moderate income in there as well?
Yeah, I don't think that it would be an overconcentration of low or very low income. I think that low income sets a maximum bar, and there's a wide range of residents that need that housing. If we would be happy to provide some additional documentation as far as who would be eligible for that, but it's really a lot of local workforce. A lot of times we refer to it as just as workforce housing. The moderate income level goes very high, north of $100,000 a year, which we have no issue serving moderate income residents as well. It's just not financially feasible on this deal, and that's why it hasn't moved forward. So that's the primary reason why we focused on low and very low income residents. One, there is a strong need. This is the workforce community that we're talking about, and we don't see it as an overconcentration at all.
You say it's not financially feasible?
With the moderate income residents, or with the moderate income units.
For Meta?
Well, or for the operating engineers, or for anyone. Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, that's the primary reason that we're here, is to discuss the financial feasibility of it, because we take no issue with the way the development is proposed in the agreement, and we would be happy to move forward right now pursuant to the spirit and the terms of that agreement. But in all reality, in this marketplace, it can't be done. There's a complication with low-income and moderate-income units that it doesn't work unless the city was willing to financially support the deal, as it has on affordable deals in the past. But we understood pretty clearly that that wasn't the position that the city wanted to take on this project and put more funds in. So what we were attempting to do was to still deliver on an affordable project that did not request any additional city support beyond the land. And that's how we approached this.
Mr. Price.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's a bit of a revelation for me, anyway.
The affordable
what the
housing
city
world
is recommending, you're telling us, is not financially feasible for Meta.
As the original agreement, yeah, I don't believe we could build it in the marketplace today. I mean, things can always change, and there could be new investors and different lending programs, but right now, the combination of moderate and low and very low does not work.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Price.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I heard you mention as well that the prevailing wage issue was a huge impediment and would not allow it to go forward. And you're aware that the city's position is that it's, unless absent some opinion from the Attorney General or some other authority, that we're going to stick to that. So would that in fact be a deal breaker as well?
Yeah, if the project was required to pay prevailing wage, that would burden the cost structure too much that it wouldn't be able to move forward. And we've done our own research on that. I mean, we would not take the position that it didn't have to pay prevailing wage unless we felt that, and we've consulted with 2 law firms on that with regards to prevailing wage law, and both of them felt that it would not be required. And so all we were asking was that it be removed from this agreement, and we would be willing to indemnify the city from any liability if, in fact, it did turn out that we did have to pay prevailing wage. We would take that burden on ourselves as a private developer.
I'm not sure, Madam City Attorney, is that Can you speak to that issue?
Sure. When it comes to prevailing wage, my opinion, and quite honestly, they've gotten legal counsel's advice, but at the end of the day, the Department of Industrial Relations, they're the ones that makes the ultimate determination as to whether prevailing wage applies or not. Cities have typically dealt with prevailing wage in various ways. In our existing agreement, we purposely said that prevailing wage would apply and that they would have to pay it. Other ways cities have handled prevailing wage issues, because cities usually don't get into the nuts and bolts of a project to determine whether it's required, is we'll put a standard defense and indemnification clause in there, basically saying it might apply, and if it does, the developer's on the hook if it does apply, and they'll defend and indemnify the city for any prevailing wage violations. I was trying to come up with a medium solution, since we had specifically required prevailing wage. So my recommendation was that if they got an opinion either from the Attorney General or the Department of Industrial Relations, then we'd be happy to remove that prevailing wage requirement in the agreement, subject to them defending and indemnifying us. But you have options.
Thank you.
Mr. Fox. No, Mr. Fox was first in line, next in line.
As it's, you keep referencing the project as it currently exists, but unless I'm mistaken, and I'm looking at the staff report here, there actually has been some negotiation on the part of staff, so it's not the existing project. There has been some changes. So I think the question is, as it sits now with staff's recommendations, is it your testimony tonight that the project is infeasible?
Yes. Yeah. We would need the recommendations as we had requested them.
All right, so for example, the requirement to have all three-story buildings, you're saying that that's an absolute must?
That's something that we could look at. It is as it's designed right now, but what we would have to give to offset that would be some of our social service place, or possibly the swimming pool, or we could look at redesigning. We had worked closely with the city planners to get to this point. I know, to realign the parking so that it lined up with the intersection. So there were a lot of accommodations that were made, and we think the site plan actually lays out very well. We could put some 2 stories. We could not do half of the project as 2-story. You would lose, I think, somewhere around 26 to 30 units if you just lost the 3rd floor on half of the project. But we could possibly look at restructuring the site plan and moving some units around. And if we did come down to 2-story, we would just lose amenity space, open space, and a community space. So it's feasible to still maintain the 140 units, but the project would have to be altered.
Okay. So item 5, permit all 3-story buildings, that is in fact still negotiable?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now let's move to item 1, amend the unit mix as described. As I'm looking here at the staff report, the current agreement is 80. You're looking at, I'm just looking at, I don't have to read the numbers here. Staff has kind of taken the middle of the road approach there as well. Can you live with that?
I think that if the 10 units that are floating could be allowed to be 3-bedroom units, that would probably suffice for us. I think that the 60, if we ended up with 61s, 52s, and 33s, that would probably not be a structure that would make sense for us.
Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Adam, you had a follow-up question?
Let me continue on with Mr. Fox's line of questioning on the feasibility of this thing. So number 2, you stated that with 50 moderate income units, no go.
Correct.
Is there any amount of moderate income units you could work with?
I was going to try to stay out of the detail, but I'll go into it a little bit. It's really affordable housing deals, and as the city, as you know, because you financed a number of them with other developers, require tax credits. And tax credits are really how these deals are funded and move forward. And so on this project, we were proposing tax-exempt bonds, an allocation through the state along with tax credits, and then you sell those tax credits, and that becomes the equity into the deal. and they're only eligible for very low and low-income units. So on the moderate-income units, what happens is the moderate-income rents aren't actually high enough to offset the loss of the tax credit equity that you get, so it ends up creating a very large gap. So could we live with maybe 5 or 10? You start to say, well, maybe, but even 1 creates a gap, because that unit will be more feasible as a low-income unit than it is as moderate. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I just don't think the rents are high enough to support the development of that unit without the tax credit equity associated with it.
Yeah, okay, I understand completely. Thank you.
Mr. Burke, I do have a question regarding the calculation of the very low and moderate income. You said moderate income would be over $100,000. How did you arrive at that amount?
I think we were looking at the 3 bedrooms at the I believe it's 110 or 120% of AMI. So the moderate income has a range between 80 and 120, I believe it is. And we looked that up for the 3-bedroom household, and it was north of 100,000. I don't have the figures with me.
And you use Ventura County numbers?
107, 150. That's the 2012 income limits.
Yeah, for Ventura County.
For Ventura County, correct.
Any additional questions? None? Okay, then we have, after Mr. Burke, thank you, Mr. Burke.
Thank you.
We have James Shoemaker. Are you available now? Or just for questions? Just for questions, okay. I'm not quite sure with which company you are. Are you with Meta Housing, or?
No, I'm a partner in the...
Oh, you're a partner. Okay, very good. Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Chris... I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your last name. Mafris? Okay. Are you available for questions only? And Meta, okay, and... okay, Mr. Burke answered everything. All right. Next speaker would be Mr. Kidwai.
Nick Kidwai, Director, Concerned Citizens, Thousand Oaks. Honorable Mayor, City Council. Hello, Mr. Fox. First of all, even the mayor was mistaken. There's only one public hearing. This is not a public hearing. And one of the big differences from people on this side is that you get only 3 minutes instead of 5 minutes under the Foxy rules. And I sent that email about the Foxy rules to somebody that is a government consultant who's become a friend as an attorney in Connecticut, and she just loved that comment, even though she doesn't know the background. So sometimes you score even though you don't want to. I'd like to know who was the city attorney that signed this 8% return guarantee. I mean, it's just the most obnoxious, ridiculous thing that was done. And the gentleman that left, I mean, maybe you have something to hide. I mean, that's why so many of these things are kept under the table, and that's why for 20 years I've been talking about hanky-panky going on in the city. Right, Mr. Adam? Thank you for smiling. If TOTV can show the overhead, this is not mine. This is the red action of the Caruso project that is guaranteed, the lakes across the street. That's the best that they will provide citizens and taxpayers. I mean, it is disgusting. Why do you have to get into these kind of arrangements? My friend Opie, I mean, even he has retired. I mean, he used to write such wonderful things on Ventura County Star, but I guess pretty soon I will have to say goodbye too. I think, and I'm disappointed that Mr. Rick Schrader is not here. I read his letter in May and talked to him at the Glancy funeral about the letter. And, I come from sales and marketing. I mean, I'm not you people think about car sales, people shoving things down the throat. What you do is give what the buyers, what the consumers, what the markets want. And who is the expert on it but Rick Schrader, many mansions. And he gave, maybe that's the reason he didn't come, because his ideas were rejected. But at least the 8% is out. But the mix, it should not be based on ROI. It should be based on what is best for the community, what the need is. If they don't like it, they can take a hike. There's no contractual obligation. In the 10 seconds, I would just say that this thing about the bus is not going there, it's just a mile there. Students being too far, I live further away than this from Walnut. So those are all just excuses. Even though I don't support that, I think Rick Schrader's comment should be absorbed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. And also available for questions only is Mr. Tom Cohen. You have a comment to make? Okay, go right ahead. Representing Meta Housing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Tom Cohen. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and I'm here on behalf of Meta Housing. I want to just make a couple of broad statements. Number one, Meta Housing wouldn't be here if they didn't think this site was a good site to build affordable housing. Point number two, affordable housing is needed in our community. There are examples of affordable housing in all different parts of our community. This location is attractive, excuse me, for a number of reasons. It is in the industrial park. It's on the outer edges of the industrial park. It has open space that is behind it. It has incredible vista views to the northeast. It's going to be a lovely place for people to live and feel good about Thousand Oaks and living here. It's also a place for workforce housing to live, and Rancho Cordero couldn't be a better place to provide the job that will have the jobs. Excuse me. So there's housing there to provide to those people that will work there, which has other benefits to the community, and that is people will be in their cars for a shorter period. It'll have less of an impact on our air quality, less traffic trips throughout the community. I think it makes a lot of sense at this location. In terms of access to services, we mentioned it already, but it's important to validate this point. Groceries are it's actually 9/10 of a mile to Target. We checked that out. Restaurants, banks, medical offices across the street, pet stores, so on. It's all there. We've all lived in different parts of this community. We've got to get in our car and drive more than a mile to get to some services. That's just a given. This is, I think, is somewhat of a red herring discussion point. The other point is who are these tenants? These are people that are earning, for a one-person household, a little over $30,000, up to a five-person household, $75,500. These are people that can afford to pay these rents. It's not a ton of money, but they can pay these rents. They're not on the verge of homelessness. They have cars. They have jobs. I also want to point to you the project benefits, and I apologize for sending this letter late today. We sent it over about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, but it has in here a list of the project benefits that I think it's really important for you to take a look at. We've already hit on workforce housing and why it's important. It's close proximity to jobs. We're not asking for city funds, and we understand how this deal was structured, how it came about, but typical affordable housing projects, 100% affordable housing projects, require subsidy. The funding mechanism for this project only allows for us to build low and very low income units. That's
Thank you.
Just the fact, and that's what the marketplace
Thank you, Mr.
dictates.
Cohen. Your time is up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm available to respond to any
Thank
questions.
you. Are there any questions of Mr. Cohen? None? Thank you very much. All right. And if I did announce that it was a public hearing, it is not. I misspoke. It is a department report, really. Okay. That concludes our public speakers regarding this project. Any questions of staff? I do have a question. If nobody else, I will go ahead and ask it. Mr. Prescott, there must be well over 100 units of low-income, affordable units on Los Feliz Drive, or at least being constructed?
Yes, that's true. There are several projects there.
Okay. And they're not moderate units. They're all low-income, right?
I believe that in the, there's 4 affordable projects, that the redevelopment agency helped or the Area Housing Authority itself built, and I believe those each are all low or very low income.
Okay.
One of them may have a moderate income component, but they're predominantly low income or very low income.
Thank you. Mr. Adam.
Mr. Prescott, when you came up with these 8 provisions, did the financial feasibility of this project for Meta come into play into your thinking?
Well, I think these were mainly what we believed was good land use if the property were to be used for housing to get a good kind of project. Meta has asserted all along really that on the income mix that it could not include the moderate incomes without hurting their ability to finance it. The others, I'm not so sure they couldn't be worked around, the other requirements. But tax credit financing is the way affordable housing is built these days. We're working with the Area Housing Authority for another project on Los Feliz, and they just got tax credit financing for the first phase of that, and that's allowing it to go forward.
So if we were to agree to stipulation number 2, provision number 2, then staff's recommendation, then we're effectively scuttling the project, aren't we?
Well, we'd like, the opportunity to really delve into that in more detail. These are comments that Meta is making, but we haven't independently verified them, and I'm, intuitively thinking they're probably right, but I think if the council gives us some direction to move forward with this, we get into the next level of detail with looking at these individual issues and determining what maybe there's some other options that they haven't thought of yet.
Okay, thanks.
I think Mr. Mitnick would like to add.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, to follow up on that question about feasibility, typically when we're dealing with developers or property owners, while we might or might not be aware of that, it's typically not taken into consideration when a development application comes, whether or not the developer can afford it or not afford it. They might share with us what their financial issues are. The question or the statement was made about not requesting city assistance. Just to remind everybody, this is city-owned land, so there is a significant value that's being conveyed to the applicant from the municipality. Just want to remind you of that. Thank you.
Do we know what the value of this land is currently under its current zoning and general plan designation?
Short answer is no. The property is designated as institutional, and the specific plan, I think, calls it out as either a recycling center or city property. So, that's a kind of a narrow range of uses to value.
But I can add this with the acreage and so on, it'd be several $1 million with housing zoning on it. So it's a significant subsidy.
Okay, well, the number is not really currently known exactly, but I'm sure it's worth quite a bit. All right, do we have any other comments? Is someone willing to make a motion? Mr. Cohen? Sure, why don't you go ahead and do that then, Mr. Burke?
Thank you. Just to respond, that is correct that the land is being given as part of the land implementation and development agreement. But typically in these affordable housing deals, and I'm sure as you're aware from the deals you've done in the city, it usually takes significantly more subsidy to provide 100% affordable housing or very low and moderate housing than just the free land, regardless of the price. Whether the valuation comes in at $2 million or $10 million, it's still free land, and you have to construct the building. And typically, the building itself requires some level of subsidy in addition to the other financing. So what we're trying to do here is do it without any of that, and that's the proposal we put forth.
Mr. Berg, are you a nonprofit organization?
No, we are a for-profit organization.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Mr. Fox.
I'll start the discussion at least. From what I've heard tonight, I think, I guess to get to the end, there's, from my perspective, I think there needs to be more discussion between staff and the applicant. I don't think council's, at least I'm not ready to say yes or no to the proposal. I'm very concerned about although nicely stated, kind of an ultimatum that they have to have 3-story buildings. I think that could be worked through, and I think more work needs to be done on that. And what I heard was some significant redesign. Based on that, I think we need to, just that alone, I think it warrants sending it back to the drawing board. The other issue is the unit mix. Appears that there's some discussion on that. That appears to be right for more discussions between staff and the applicant. And then I think the game changer really is the affordability mix. And I tend to agree with Mr. Prescott. That seems to be the poison pill. If we don't want to go down that road, project can't be built. And essentially we're saying we're really not interested in that. So I think the city attorney's opinion on the prevailing wage is cautious and reasoned, and I think we need to follow that. I will tell you that when I negotiated the original agreement with operating engineers, they're basically a union, and prevailing wage was very important to them, and that was really the basis for why it was placed in there. So I think Ms. Noonan's advice to us is let them go get the letter, and that lets us out of the prevailing wage. All that to be said, we do need affordable housing in our community. And I think Mr. Cohen's point is Meta wouldn't be proposing this if they didn't think it would be a good place for affordable housing. I still have some questions about that, but I just don't think enough discussion between staff and the applicant has gone on where council has some concrete data to make a decision one way or the other. I think if I was forced to make a decision tonight, it would be no. There's not enough information here to warrant an approval. I will say this, the city has over the years received awards for the type of affordable housing that we provide. I would suggest if you drive by an affordable project in Thousand Oaks and those that are market rate, it is virtually impossible to distinguish between the two. And I just want to make sure if we're going to go down this road for affordable projects, that it meets the high standards that we have here in Thousand Oaks. It's my understanding Meta does very good projects, but I think the last question that the mayor asked is, this is for profit. They're making some money here, which is good for them. That's why they're in business. But I just think we need to make sure that what we're approving from the planning staff standpoint in terms of mix, in terms of 1-story, 2-story, the amenities, the play areas, all those things, they need to be in place. And so I'm inclined to either, and I can ask for the city attorney's advice on this, send this back to staff and let them work through some of these details.
Well, I think that is what the recommendation is
Okay.
to enter into further negotiations with Meta Housing. I just had a quick question. The pictures we were seeing here, Arista Uptown Apartments, those are Meta Housing projects? The ones in Colorado?
Yeah,
Well,
the
I'm
two that
looking
were
at it in
from-
the supplemental.
The two that were from KTGY, the Arista and the Uptown, were examples. We had given some proposals both from our architectural firm and then also some that Meta had built as well. The Magnolia one was built by us.
So the apartments that you're proposing would be looking similar to the ones I'm looking at in the supplemental packet?
You know, I think that's open to discussion. We had proposed some and asked for some feedback, and we were given, let's wait.
Okay, because those are some fancy-looking apartments. I mean, really fancy.
Yeah, specifically, as I look at the recommendations, I'm specifically looking at items 1, 2, and 7. I'm inclined to approve or agree with staff's other recommendations. I think those are the items that are still outstanding. So those are my thoughts.
You're saying, Mr. Fox, you would agree on item 1, 2, and 7?
No, I'm saying that I agree to 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 8. That those are recommendations that I think the city would adopt and Meta should agree to. Items 1, 2, and 7 seem to be the point of most discussion this evening by the council and the applicant, and those are the ones that I would send back to the drawing board, so to speak, so we're not getting the whole thing back.
Okay. I would want to add the expiration of 5 years. I'd like to reduce that, actually.
Well, that's a recommendation of the city attorney, so
it's all negotiable.
Yeah, it's all negotiable. You know, when we were looking at the duration of the agreement, we took into account how long it had already been going on, but also typically if we entered into, for instance, a development agreement, they're typically about 10 years. Staff recognizes that this is a difficult project with some complex issues, so staff believed that a 5-year term was reasonable to give the parties an opportunity to finalize all the plans, submit the plans, and break ground, and get the project going. But if council is inclined to have a shorter duration, we can take that back during our negotiations with the developer.
I think that could be a discussion, a topic for negotiation. But Mr. Fox, are you forming a motion to approve items?
Sure. It seems like we might be headed towards some agreement here. So I would move the staff recommendation to revise the agreement and further negotiations with items 1, 2, and 7. I would add 8 if there's consensus on the council. I just remind the council that 8 is the city's position, or at least the staff's position. So, I'd inclined to agree with the city attorney on that. So I'm looking at 1, 2, and 7, and then items that would be renegotiated, and then items 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 8. Those are considered adopted by the council as we're not interested in negotiating those points anymore.
Okay, we have a motion. Are there any comments?
Is that clear enough for everybody?
I think so,
I'm trying to
yeah.
narrow this down a little bit.
No, that's clear. Any
Right.
comments to the motion, Mr. Adam?
I mean, well, I think without question, it is 1, 2, and 7. No question at all. And if it were to be agreed to as it's written now, there's no project. So, operating engineers sat on this piece for 9 years and didn't do a thing with it. And now we have Meta Housing, who's stepped up, that hopefully can do something with it. But and I think Mr. Prescott himself agreed that there's some room on number 2. And so, I wholeheartedly agree. Let's go back to the drawing board on 1, 2, and 7, and the other provisions would be fine with me.
Any additional comments? I would be in agreement. I'm just adding that with point 8, the expiration perhaps. I mean, this has been going on now for 9 years. We would like to just come to a conclusion with this, and if it's 4 years, I think something like that, 4 years would probably be, would suffice. That would be then the year 2017, and by then hopefully we would have some sort of resolution to this. 3 years? Well, no. Okay, well, again, we'll leave this up to staff. And any further comments to the motion? No. Mr. Fox, any final comments as maker of the motion? Please vote.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 10. We are announcing new appointees to the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Mrs. Irwin.
I am recommending Sue Engler. She was Dr. Glancy's traffic commissioner, and I'm recommending that she continues on as my traffic commissioner. Diane McKay had to step down.
Thank you.
Yes,
Please, yeah, we'll vote. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, item 10B, Mr. Adam.
Yes, I'm recommending Dr. Michael Reeder, longtime resident here in Thousand Oaks, ran a successful dentistry practice for many years. He's the only guy I know who reads federal highway transportation manuals in his spare time, so that ought to qualify him, don't you think? I think he's going to do a good job. He's got the time to do it, so I heartily recommend Mike Reeder.
Thank you. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
Congratulations to the appointees. Item 11, City Council Successor Agency to Thousand Oaks Redevelopment Agency reports. There is none. Then we have item 12A1, which you will find in your supplemental packet, follow-up report on meetings attended by council members. The first one is to be presented by Mr. Price, who attended the League of California Cities Academy last week.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I did have the opportunity to attend the new council member and mayor's meeting up in Sacramento. I think we did some good work up there. I learned a great deal, as I always do, attending one of those. The League of California Cities is a premier organization that really supports cities across the state, and they have, on a number of occasions, been instrumental in helping specifically Thousand Oaks. So, good conference, very well attended. I might point out it was the first time that the conference had sold out. There were over 400 new council members and mayors from cities throughout the state, and they had to cut that off very early. So, good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. The second presentation is Mrs. Irwin, who attended the same conference.
Actually, I wasn't at the conference. I was at the Public Safety Committee meeting
of the League of California Cities.
Yes,
My apologies.
Yeah. And I was there with Mr. Price. We look at things in a different way, so some things in a different way. What we talked about is the work plan for the next year, and that is going to include a discussion on gun control. And then the other issue was really a lot of talk about realignment. And as everybody read in the paper, our own Mina Leyba worked very hard to make sure that contract cities were able to get some of the pot to help cities deal with the effects of realignment. And basically, the governor added $4 million to the $20 million pot. So she worked with the sheriff and worked through the sheriff's state sheriff's group to get that money. And it's really an issue of fairness. It's not necessarily that much money altogether, but contract cities should be treated the same as cities that have their own police department. One of the disturbing things was we had a couple of police chiefs talk, and they have really seen, once the jails are filled, a big uptick in the amount of crime that cities are dealing with. So that's really something we need to be wary of, and hopefully we won't be seeing the same things, but it's a big concern across the state. I don't know, Mr. Price, did you have anything to add to that?
If I may, I want to say again, echo your comments about Mina Leyba and our own legislative affairs manager, and Sheriff Jeff Dean, who brought it to the city's attention that cities like ours, Thousand Oaks, who contract for their police services through sheriff's departments throughout California, were really left out in the dark and weren't going to receive any funds. And it was because of Mina Leyba's hard work and efforts that she got together a group of cities who are similar in that they contract their police services through sheriff's departments. And I think we owe it to her for that additional $4 million. It's going to be spread throughout the state and will go to police departments that didn't even know that they had the potential of getting any money. So thank you, Mina.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it was Mina Leba as well as Sheriff Dean, I think. Yes, Sheriff Dean as well. Fantastic. We receive the oral report. It's been received. Number 12A3 is the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the 81st Winter Meeting Update, and that will be presented by me. Is it Mr. Watkins or Mr. Jarecki for the slide presentation? I put together... They're ready. Okay, very good. Okay. I put together, I got back from Washington yesterday, and I put together really quickly a very brief slide presentation, but as a segue from what Councilmember Irwin mentioned, the topic of gun control, that's pretty much what was the top discussion or main topic at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Slide number 1, do we have that, or did we go through that already? Yeah. This is Michael Nutter. He is the mayor of Philadelphia, and he's currently the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And the conference took place at the Capitol Hilton. Next slide, please. The Capitol Hilton Hotel in Washington. And the sessions and workshops ranged from gun control to clean air to immigration reform. And one of the presentations was made by Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. And I have to say that this is a bipartisan conference, a bipartisan organization, and Mayor Emanuel, although known for his political views, basically echoed what a lot of mayors felt who were attending the conference regarding gun control. He cited a federal duck hunting law which requires a 3-cartridge limit, and he asked why federal law protects ducks better than our children and human lives for that matter. Also attending was the mayor of Connecticut, Dan Malloy, who had to deal with the Newtown massacre. Governor Dan Malloy stresses that we cannot lose our children to a poor education system or to bullets. He pointed out that Connecticut has extended the school by 90 minutes and holds students, teachers, and parents more accountable in order to improve education. And he further stated that the event on December 14 of 2012 was life-changing and must lead to real change. He urged that the country take many steps, or can take many steps, to avoid another Newtown. And he also stated that the federal database of gun owners must be improved since more than 500,000 names are missing. He thought that the value of missing names cannot be greater than the life of your children and grandchildren. I then attended a workforce that was headed by the mayor of Fresno, Mayor Ashley Swearingen, and several law enforcement officials and experts did partake in this discussion, including the National Association of School Resources Officers. All of our high schools, as you may know, have school resources officers. And the local and federal law enforcement officials stressed the importance of all schools having an emergency management plan, and that plan should require 4 phases: prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. There is additional information that I handed out. It's a black and white printout of several steps for school emergency management. The law enforcement officials say that any plan must include a family reunification plan, and any plan must include continuous drills that practice evacuation, lockdown, shelter-in-place, and active shooter scenario. And I'm pleased to let you know that this is really what Thousand Oaks has been doing, the active shooter scenario, which is only now making its way around schools around the country. The Houston program called Run, Hide, Fight is a video that was praised for its effectiveness. There is another new program available called MACTAC, which is the Multiple Assault Counterterrorism Action Capability, and it is designed to train staff, teachers, and anybody who basically wants it for active shooter scenarios. The police chief that was present, one of the police chiefs says that teachers and staff must know what to do and how to do it. One big problem was sharing the information of mental illness. Because of federal laws that protect privacy, law enforcement feels that it is an obstacle to really trying to catch the problem or potential problems early on. And the law enforcement officials want schools to share information about so-called problem students without needing to know any specific mental status of such a student. Then next slide would be, oh, wait a minute, do we have, if we go back, okay, the one page that was not on there was that police actually want cameras on campuses. They are really advocating for all schools, or to as many schools as possible, to have cameras. But all of those security measures cost a lot of money. The president has therefore proposed a $4 billion plan for the COPS program, which is community-oriented policing services. And the mayors at this conference are urging cities across the country to help push for this proposal for these $4 billion for Congress to pass it, because this particular funding must be approved by Congress. And it is still in its early stages, but any potential funding would go to schools with a solid security plan and which have already implemented steps. And as I mentioned, the guidelines of this plan still need to be worked out. And again, the mayors are urging that cities lobby Congress for a passage of the $4 billion plan, as well as a proposal to ban assault weapons, high-capacity ammunition. But all of this has to be done in concert with mental health reform, they said. It was a very, very good workshop, and I have more information to share with the staff. I brought additional information, and the last slide is a picture that was taken of the Capitol preparing for the 57th inauguration. And with that, I would like to, for the Council in the near future, to look at perhaps symbolically passing a resolution that would protect our children in the future, and other human beings for that matter. That is my report from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And that is received and filed. And if there are no questions, we can move on to item number 13. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, by way of follow-up, the council sort of stole some thunder here. I was also going to make comments about our legislative affairs manager and the good work that she's done. That issue about the funding for the contract police cities, it does reflect the tremendous spirit of cooperation that does exist on a regular basis between county and city staff. And in this case, it was the Sheriff's Department. We're very grateful to that continued success. This is an example of positive outcome, not just for Thousand Oaks and Ventura County, but for several other cities in the county as well. Follow-up, no more follow-up items other than a reminder that individuals can speak on closed session agenda items before the council goes into closed session. And I did speak with the one resident about that reminder. The next city council meeting will be on February 5th. And at this point in time, we're looking at a few department reports. I don't see any public hearings per se, but some of the department reports that staff is working on is the regional 10-year plan to end homelessness in the city. We're going to have an update and a potential revision or two. Follow up on city council meetings format. We did commit to do that, and it looks like we'll have that report ready for you. And as Councilmember Price can attest, there was some discussion about this at the new council members workshop last week, and it was pretty interesting. And I did talk to some city managers in other cities to get their perspective. We'll have an update on the housing element, a status report, and a few other items, as well as planning commissioner appointments, 2 recommendations, it looks like at this point in time. Madam Mayor, that's it by way of city manager follow-up.
Thank you very much. And before We do have a public speaker regarding closed sessions, and
Right,
the city attorney.
I'll announce it, and then you can
And then
call
we
for
will
public
call.
comments,
Thank you.
and then we can recess.
Go right ahead.
Right, so I have 4 closed session items tonight. The first one is a successor agency closed session. Successor agency to the Thousand Oaks Redevelopment Agency, conference with legal counsel for anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9C. It's one case. Thereafter, conference with real property negotiators for property APN 66700800105, located on Caneo Center Drive, Thousand Oaks, with city negotiators John Adams, Finance Director, Jay Spurgeon, Public Works Director, Nada Herdari, Senior Engineer Christopher Norman, Assistant City Attorney, with negotiating party Stu Miller, who's the lessee. Under negotiation will be the price and terms of a lease pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Third matter is conference with legal counsel for existing litigation, City of Thousand Oaks versus Parking Network, Inc., case number 56-2012-00415-100, CUBC-VTA pursuant to 54956.9A. And finally, conference with labor negotiators, city designated representatives, City Manager Scott Mitnick, Assistant City Manager Mark Watkins, City Attorney Tracy Noonan, and Human Resources Director Gary Rogers, with employer organizations for TOSIA, SMA, and TOMA, including executive managers, the Assistant City Manager, Finance Director, Community Development Director, Public Works Director, City Clerk, Human Resources Director, Cultural Affairs Director, and Library Director pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. It is unlikely that I will have anything to report at the conclusion of these closed sessions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Noonan. I will now call Mr. Nick Kidwai to speak on 14A.
Honorable and distinguished Mayor Claudia Bel de la Pena, Nick Kidwai, President of Newbury Park, council members, and distinguished City Manager Titan, Mr. Scott Mitnick. A lot of the problems in the world are because of miscommunication or lack of communication, even though the agenda is written out, and I've been a student of this for many years. I thought that we could not really speak on closed session items unless it said public comment allowed. So I'm glad that the interpretation is for, like was said so many times yesterday, Martin Luther King's Let Freedom Ring. And so I appreciate that. And I have already spoken about A, which is my concern, and it reads, Successor Agency to the Thousand Oaks Redevelopment Agency, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9. This doesn't tell enough. I mean, even if it is legally correct, your obligation is regarding everything, whether it's this or a notice about a CUP, or I know what a CUP is. It's not a CUP, conditional use permit, but and put it in plain English. And is this a potential lawsuit against the Department of Finance? Is it a lawsuit where the auto dealers would be joining you? And the most importantly, from the citizen point of view, does it involve the auto mall sign, the land that was purchased for it? I mean, there are so many gray areas, and they would not be there if it was spelled out. And so at least in the announcement, which should be in writing as to what is decided, this mystery should be solved. The other question is on number D, which is conference with labor negotiations, and this was also on closed session on December 18th, Mr. Adams' first meeting. This is where the council members are not supposed to go there and negotiate and micromanage the city, just like this dummy at the community college district has been doing. But you need to give the directions. And one council member got my vote and talked about sitting right there that we are going to make changes in the untenable pensions. And this is, I mean, this is the city's income, and this is Oxnard. I mean, I printed both from Ventura County Star. I mean, we are paying for employees' coverage of pension for city manager $21,000, assistant city manager $21,000, deputy city manager $15,000, deferred compensation $36,000. I mean, the party's over. I mean, when are you going to wake up and also do your job? I mean, it's 3 minutes are up, but it's disgusting. I mean, it's politics. I mean, this is what was said about Julia. I mean, people are fed up with it. That's why people get emotional and get upset. Thank you for letting me speak. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai, and I would like to shout out a big thank you to the young gentleman who is sitting up there in the audience from, I don't know which troop you are, which Boy Scout troop, but which one? Well, it's Troop 716. Well, thank you very much for staying the entire 3 hours on a school night, too. So that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. Thank you very much, and good luck with your project that you are working on. All right, we are going to adjourn the meeting to February 5th and going into closed session. Have a good night.